And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, it is your Friday roundtable with the Finest Unfiltered. Today's discussion, I think, is extremely important. I think our friends and listeners, we definitely rely on your engagement as well. We appreciate it. And anyone listening here, especially the unions, this is a conversation that we can't avoid. And this is, I wouldn't say you should go to the emergency room right now. God forbid, if this was, rhetorically speaking, if this was something medical, but I would say this is pretty damn urgent. It is getting to that point, though. Just to make an analogy of like how serious this is. So I've had a lot of people call me, and they know I'm very into the pension. I've always analyzed the pension. It's been something, part of my career. I've been really made it my point to understand it. So a lot of people say, oh, well, look what happened in the 70s, right? We got the variable supplement. And I said, yeah, that's true. And that, from what I've been told, that's how what's going on right now is kind of being sold. And you're being sold a bag of goods. That is not what's happening right now. There is a complete, there's a big distinction from what happened in 1970 when the variable supplement was born in comparison till now. What's the difference? You're gonna say, Eric, what are you talking about? My pension's gonna be the same, right? Because that's all I've heard. Is my monthly pension gonna change? Is it gonna change at the end of the month? Well, no. But can it? Can it one day change? Let's look at Chicago. Let's look at Baltimore. Let's look at Detroit. Can it? Not going to change right now. But what is the difference? So in 1970, they came up with the variable supplement fund, right? And at the time, the city was in a financial crisis. However, the pension system itself. Now, this is for all pensions should be listening to this, but obviously we have a centric focus on the NYPD because we have New York City police pensions. The pension was being healthily funded. It was healthy and it was being funded. And the city took a loan from it, and the agreement was, we'll take a loan from it and we'll give you that money back and you'll get the variable supplement. And the pension was still being funded. It was healthy. Now, the difference between now is they're not saying they want to take a loan. They want to raid into your pension, and it's not going to be funded healthy in the same manner. There'll be less contributions into the pension system. And you have to understand the pension system is almost like a Ponzi scheme, right? Retirees are receiving benefits from that pension, and people working are funding that pension. And what they want to do now is not fund that pension in the same way. So it's not a loan. And that compounded interest that you get now cannot be recouped. So it's a complete distinction. You have to understand. So could it affect your pension one day? Yes. But those that are about to get pensions or who wants to get on the job because you want a pension one day, you need to listen closely. John, Marlon, good morning. Let's jump into this.
Yeah. Before we got in the history of all that, and the other thing is last time this was done, I think what people forget to remember is 5,000 cops got laid off as a result of that too. Everybody always talks about the good, but never talks about the bad. But before we even get into that, and I don't care what union you're in, it really doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter if you're in a police union, doesn't matter to me if you're in NYCERS, I don't care, or you're part of NYCERS pension system and whatever union you're guided by under the NYCERS system, whatever it is, does not matter to me whatsoever. Here's the fact. You're an active cop, you're an active New York City employee, or you're a former New York City employee and you're a retiree. And whatever shape or form you retired from, you entered into a contract with the city of New York upon your hiring. You may have retired already and you're retired. How is it possible that a union is going to negotiate away something that could affect your retirement benefit without your say? One, as an active cop or an active, I'm gonna keep saying cop, but as an active city employee, you should be infuriated. You're currently working for the city. You're currently part of these unions that you're paying dues to. Why are you not having this conversation? Why is this not a transparent conversation between you, your union president, and the board representatives of that union? This is what they get paid to do. This is what they do. They don't do your job any longer. They may have done it at one time, but now they sit in nice air conditioned and heated offices. They drive company cars. They have expense accounts. This is what they do. This is what they work for. This is the Super Bowl for them. This is when they should be hot and heavy. We're dealing with all of the representation, all of the members. What's more important than the health of your pension? How do you have no say in it? And the same goes for us retirees. You know, I had a fake account that I believe is a former NYPD chief of department coming at me telling me I'm no longer in the LBA. That is so highly inaccurate. It's not funny. I'm a lifetime member of the LBA, as a matter of fact. I'm a lifetime member of the LBA. And me being a lifetime member of the LBA, Lieutenants Benevolent Association, I have no say in moves that they could make that could affect my retirement benefit. How does that happen? How does that work? How is that even legal that you could make a move that could potentially affect me in the long road, and I don't get a vote, I don't get a say, and I can't have a grievance in it? You know, something's got to change in all of union representation, because I truly believe us retirees need to have a voice in the active unions. You know, that's one. I think we need a weighted voice in those unions too. I think we need to be weighted by the amount we are as opposed to the amount of active too, because I see that there's too many people that don't know what's happening, and they're too dumb, and they'll sell out their future for the moment. And so there needs to be some type of representation here. Right now, it's taxation without representation on all of our parts. Everybody should be jumping up and down about allowing New York City mayor to dip into your pension fund. And by dip into your pension fund, what I mean is he wants to delay payments to your pension fund, meaning as active employees are paying into the system, they get money taken out of their check, whatever that is, whether it's $100, whether it's $400 a check, that money should be going towards the pension fund. What Mayor Mamdani wants to do is say, no, give me that money. I need it. And then years later, I'll be able to save all the money I owe you and pay you back and give you interest. And, you know, we'll cut our spending down the road. But yet he's shown and proven to have the inability to do that right now, which is ridiculous. And there's a lot here. So, you know, we'll get into it more. What's up, brother? Good morning.
Yo, good morning, guys. Good morning, chat. Yeah, happy Friday. I don't know where this week went either. That went by pretty quickly. But a lot to talk about this issue. And I don't know where to start because there's just so much to it. For one, if anybody tells you it's like the 70s, I mean, parts of it are like the 70s, but the recovery is not going to be like the 70s. I can guarantee you that, because there's a whole bunch of other parts to the world, what's happening with the world and the economy, that are a whole lot different from the 1970s. Okay. And the other thing is, back in the 1970s, the pension fund was very conservative in its investments. Okay. We weren't invested in private credit like where we are now. And by the way, the private credit market is in a tailspin right now. And as we talked about before, as I mentioned before, a lot of these hedge funds aren't allowing investors to take out their money, right? There's a lot of losses in that market, and it just hasn't hit the books yet. But the pension fund is invested in the private credit market, okay? So they're not, I'm sure they're not going to be telling you that how much losses we're potentially facing in that end, right? But the point is, though, that things are not quite like the 70s in all aspects, okay? The bankruptcy, yeah, is similar to the 1970s, but the world has changed where the recovery is going to be a lot more difficult than the 1970s, okay? For one, in the 1970s, the US had no global equivalent when it comes to being a superpower and economy. Today, we do, and that's China. And the other thing is the AI, what's going on with AI? I'll talk about it in the next go around. AI is disrupting a lot of jobs, and a lot of jobs on Wall Street. And I talked about last week how Wall Street receipts benefit the city, and how the city, they're kind of like they have kind of like a parasitic relationship, where the city is the city's pushing a lot of Wall Street agendas like the Super Speeder Act, right? The city's pushing a lot of their agenda because if they do well, that a lot of that tax revenue goes back into New York City. Well, the problem is AI is disrupting Wall Street as well, and there'll be fewer people on Wall Street in the future. Wall Street will be more decentralized around the country, and as you can see, in places like Dallas. So there's a lot to this, and you guys yourselves should read into this and not just listen to what we talk about today. You should dig into it yourself and participate yourself before your union walks all over your future.
Yeah, spot on, brother. You have to be an active participant. So if you're active in the NYPD right now, and I'm not talking about retirees right now. I'm saying if you're active in the NYPD, you need to be active, involved in your union as far as being a participant and asking questions and being involved and paying attention. Because I think that I don't want to say people are dumb, but I think people are kind of ignorant when it comes to their pension, and I want to say they almost believe it's like magic money. No matter what happens, my pension's going to be properly funded. When I retire, I'm getting this pension. But you have to understand what your pension system is. It's pretty much a bank, and that bank has to be properly funded. Not only why it has to be funded, it has to be protected. And I think people have to understand that balance. It has to be funded, and it also has to be protected. That's why we have union board members that are on the pension board, which I believe should be to protect your pension. But you have to ask yourself, are they there to protect your pension, or are they there to look out for their own potential benefits for themselves and the other union board members? Because this whole idea of tier 2 being enhanced, for anyone that's tier 2A, you have to say to yourself, great, if you're active right now, that's great. Potentially, you have an opportunity to not only retire based on your last year, which could only be 20% more than the year before. You get an evaluation of your best 3 years. So the question I pose is, okay, great. I retired under tier 2. Can I go back and reevaluate my pension and use the best 3 years? And I've been told at this point, the answer is no. So it only benefits anyone that is still tier 2. Who's on the job that is still tier 2? Most of the people on the job that are still tier 2 are in the union. And we've had this discussion quite some time. And John, including yourself, I think that was a great point. The union should predominantly be tier 3 members because the job is predominantly tier 3, and yet most of them are tier 2. So I go back to your pension system. I have to say it has to be funded and it has to be protected. So the question at this point is, why do we have a dichotomy between the PBA and the SBA speaking out about the pensions, and the DEA, the CEA, and the LBA are quiet? You have to ask yourself, what are they waiting for? Because in the 70s, the unions made a deal for that variable supplement, but it was a loan, and the fund was, when I say the fund, your pension system was healthy and it was being funded. This is something completely different. If it's not funded, it's not and they take the money from it, it's not a loan because they can't pay that money back. They can't recoup it because it's not a healthy fund. So that's why it's a major problem, especially if you're active. So you can't think it's just magic money. I'm going to retire and I'm getting a pension. That's the ultimate goal. But if it's not funded properly when you retire, it could be something completely different. And we can't get to that point. It takes under the state legislature, it takes 2 votes for the state constitution to actually remove and curb that pension. Can it happen? It can. John, what are your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, so before we even get into, because I see everybody getting gaslit by their unions, the first signal that your unions are selling you out should be all of this legislation. Anyone that pays attention to politics, how long it takes legislation to get through city council, to get through Albany, to get through the assembly, the Senate, and then get the governor to sign it. All of a sudden, all of this pro-public safety legislation is just flying through the ranks. At the same time, Mamdani wants to access to your pension funds. It's just flying right through a supermajority, Democrat-controlled city council state assembly and state senate, and with a left-wing governor who has proven herself to be pro-criminal and anti-police. So you got to sit there and ask yourself, why all of a sudden did they wake up in late May and decide they were going to start ripping bills through? So one thing I've learned is that I don't ever want to hear again that things take time, because nothing takes time when they need something. Nothing. I'll never let any politician, a Republican or a Democrat, ever tell me again that things takes time, because I watch things just fly right through because they need something. They want access to money. Oh, let's get these bills passed. They know how to work when they want something. So that's one. But before we get into any of those bills, before we get into any of that, because I don't give a shit what your benefit is. That tier 2A thing is bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. It affects 0 people. There's a few, excuse me. It affects a few people. It'll benefit you if you're injured. It'll benefit you if you're jammed up. It'll benefit you if you can't do the overtime that you did in your previous years. But it's not going to retain anybody. It's not going to keep anybody much longer. Maybe it'll keep a guy 6 months or a year. It's not solving the retention crisis. It's not helping that. Keeping guys from 63 to 65. Oh, it's a major milestone. How is that helping people on the street? At 63 or 65, you are no longer an active, proactive police officer on the streets of New York City. You're an old man either sitting on a union board as the union president, or you're sitting in one police plaza. I hate to break the news to you. You know, I hate, especially in the American male. I mean, at 65, you guys are basically on your way out. You know, you're working with months left in your lifespan. So that, again, is being sold as benefiting the rank and file, and that's not helping anybody. And then when you look at, well, we want to push the age up to guys that, you know, so that they could be 40, 42 and still take this job. Yeah, it should happen. But why are they pushing the age up to take the job where you're allowed to take the job? Because they're making city service a job and not a career. They don't care if you ever get that pension. They don't want you to get that pension, because ultimately, at the end of the day, they know they're not going to be able to catch up, because any city and state that's ever done this move where they deferred pension payments has never caught up. And the funds all border on being insolvent or are insolvent. And now the burden falls to the taxpayer. So I don't care what carrot's being dangled in front of your face. It doesn't matter to me. Oh, they're going to give us a raise with no givebacks. You're a moron. You're taking the now and selling out your future. You're entitled to a raise. You don't have to fund your own raise. The city of New York has to fund your raise. You do not fund your own raises through selling out your future. It's like me saying right now, I'm going to give myself a raise. I'm going to give myself a raise in my pension. I'm going to take my savings accounts and I'm going to start adding. I'm going to add $10,000 a month. I'm going to add $10,000 a month from my savings and my retirement accounts to my monthly pension stipend. How much am I going to have left in 10 years? How much am I going to have left in 10 years? It's the same concept. It's the exact same concept. You lose all the interest on that money and nothing's going back in there. And now I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that because I'm not even using the money myself. I'm giving it to my buddy over here who's promising me that he's going to do better and he's going to pay me back someday. So I don't care what it is that's being dangled. You know, there's a lot of people that are looking to benefit off the Pat Gordon bill, as I like to call it, which is the traffic agent bill, where they want to allow traffic agents to count their time up front in city service. You know, I like to call it the Pat Gordon grift more than the Ditteral Islam bill. And I think it's an absolute disgrace that they named that bill after a murdered cop. And that falls on the PBA. So anyone that got a problem with me talking about it, good. Have a good problem with it. I'll be up in New York all month if you got a serious problem with it. We could have the conversation in person, because it's a disgrace. It's a slap in the face to the family of Ditteral Islam. It's a slap in the face to every cop that goes out on New York City streets. Because let me tell you something, that doesn't benefit anybody. It's just a grift for one guy who wants his time to count up front to get more years on his pension. And it's going to benefit other people. And I've told everyone that's contacted me about it. I've gotten DMs, I've gotten text, I've gotten calls, I've gotten message on my Instagram, and I'm not afraid to say it. If you're willing to trade the solvency of the pension system for your own personal benefit, not only are you selfish, you're a moron.
Yeah, and you don't know history, okay? Because the problem here is, and what John is referring to also, is that there have been other places where this has been done, and in the long run, what ended up happening is their pension, the city went insolvent anyway, you know, and their pensions were, in the case of Detroit, was adjusted. And the issue here is federal Title IX bankruptcy, you know, has supremacy over your state constitution. So the state constitution, it can say whatever it wants. Your pension is guaranteed, but that's doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter if the city doesn't have money, right? If the city were to declare bankruptcy, or as I believe is going to happen, the city is going to hold the threat the potential threat of bankruptcy over the heads of your unions, like the sword of Damocles, in order to force them to preemptively make cuts to your pension. That's what I believe is actually going to happen in a couple of years. The problem is, right, that the city right now couldn't even find the 6 billion they needed to finish to cover the budget, right? This to cover the budget as it stands right now, right? To balance it. They couldn't even find that $6 billion. That 6 billion came from Hochul and the state. So now you're telling me that they're going to be able to find the upwards of $50 billion they will need if they defer payments. Okay. Now we don't know how long they're going to defer payments to. The speculation has been, I believe, 2037. As it stands now, they owe 39 billion to the funds in 2032. We don't even know where they're going to find that $39 billion right now. If you can't find $6 billion this year, and next year, on top of all that money they owe, right? They have another $6 to $7 billion hole in the budget. And that's right now not counting inflationary pressures that's going to inevitably raise that amount, right? They can't find that money, but you're telling me they're going to be able to find the $39 billion they currently owe you now. They owe the fund by 2032. But instead, now they're going to add another 20 billion on top of that if they just by kicking the can down the road to 2037. The the idea that this is simply borrowing, is simply a loan to the city, is nuts, because you would never loan your fiscally irresponsible friend that you keep lending money to that never pays you back. At some point, you got to tell them, dude, you got to get your shit together. Okay, I can't just keep endlessly giving you money, you know. And this is what you're doing, except this is your future. Okay, this is your retirement that's going to be affected by it. Okay, the problem is the city cannot balance it doesn't have any fiscal responsibility now. So how are you telling me they're going to somehow gather it up when it's time to pay you to pay back that money to the funds in as it stands now? What, that's just 5 years away for 2032, and 2037 would be, 10 years from now. So you tell me in that 10 years, the city's going to become fiscally responsible if they're not now? Things have to start now, and the unions have to start putting pressure now on the city to get its stuff together. We cannot wait until we're near the cliff in order to find that come to Jesus moment that I keep talking about.
So I think we have to keep diving into people understanding the pension system, because unfortunately, I think people, maybe cops particularly, don't want to understand it. Kind of like this guru thing. Like, if I just pretend I don't understand it, and as long as I'm getting my pension, right? I'm getting my monthly payment, and I'm going to get my pension. Well, I think that's a fool's errand, and you're not thinking about the long term of what can happen, because ultimately, what is a pension, right? It's a giant pool of investments. Cops pay into it. The city contributes into it. But here's the danger. When politicians want to dip into your pension and reduce your contributions, well, that investment doesn't compound over time in the same way. And you have to say to yourself, okay, but I'm still getting my pension. Yeah, but it could change if it's not funded and it's not healthy. Now, many cops, you guys do active pay detail. You work in banks. You stand in a bank. Why are you standing there? You're there to help protect the money that's in the bank. Why is money in a vault? Why is it locked? Why is there a giant lock? To protect the money that's in the bank. The unions, rhetorically speaking, and I just want to give you this analogy, they should be pay detail. They should be the vault of the pension system. They should have that thing on lock and key to protect it from politicians that want to dip into your pension and reduce the contributions that are in that pension system. That's what we're trying to tell you. The pension needs to be funded and protected like it's a bank. They should be protecting it just as if you were at a bank, of how the bank protects the money. Because if I told you right now, rhetorically speaking, I'm going to give you $1 million, that $1 million is in the bank. Don't you want to know that that bank is protected? You want to know what's under lock and key? Well, if you're going to get a pension, you can assume if you live long enough, it's probably going to be worth over $1 million. So let's protect that $1 million. Let's not allow the dangerous politicians to dip into your pension contributions. That could hurt you. So the unions are the ones that we're relying on to protect you. And you have to say to yourself, why don't they care? Like, what's in it for them? We've told you. Who benefits by tier 2? They're the only ones that benefit, as far as I'm concerned, unless there's some guys just hanging around the job because they just love it so much right now. But most of the people that are on the job that are tier 2 are in the union. So, in my opinion, and we talk about this all the time, the union boards should be heavily participated upon, and should the board members, in my opinion, should be retired guys. Why? Retired guys aren't beholden to any politicians. They're not looking for the next promotion. They're not looking for the best seat in the job. They're not looking for the unmarked car. Retirees want to protect their pension. Because the reality is, these old guys, and they're old, these guys that are on the union boards right now, if they had to put on a uniform, strap on boots, and wear a body cam, they would not still be in the union. They would not be doing the job. The NYPD is about to go to 12-hour tours. Now, Jessica Tisch wants to tell you under the blanket that it's because of the threat environment. The threat environment is the NYPD, because the NYPD is diminished. They don't have the manpower. The threat environment is the NYPD leadership lying to the public that they're properly staffed. They go into 12-hour tours, not because of threat environment from what's coming from Iran. It's because of their own environment. That's the reality. So those union board members should be on the streets right now, but they're in unmarked cars. They're going out, they're having steak dinners. Retirees should be the ones that are on the pension. Protect your pensions. We should all be in a position right now, pushing the unions right now. They should protect your pension just like your money is being protected in a bank. That's how serious this is.
Yeah, there's just been so much chatter, and it makes me laugh, So I started putting pressure on the PBA, SBA, and all the police unions, right? And I recommend that every city worker put pressure on their own unions that govern their specific pension fund, right? Especially the main ones, because regardless whether you're a member of that union or not, if their vote could somehow affect your future, you should have a say in that. And so what I've been saying is that people need to start contacting these unions. They need to start hammering them on social media, tagging them and everything, demanding where will you vote if Mamdani wants to delay pension payments to our pension fund? Where will you vote? So the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, the PBA, Pat Hendry, he came out and said that he would not support the vote. He would not vote. So now they have 4 votes, right? They would not vote to allow Mamdani to raid the pension fund, because unlike what George Unk 6762 is saying, this is exactly that. This is exactly raiding your pension fund. It's exactly that. And I understand you got tier 6 benefits, but again, you sold out your future for a benefit today. So if you think that was a good deal, George, let me know. I got a couple of things. Whatever you need to buy, let me know. I'll sell it to you. Let me know. I'll give you a great deal today. It's going to screw you later down the road tomorrow, but don't worry about that, right? Because it's a good deal today. So they and then the Sergeants Benevolent Association president came out, Vinnie Valalong, only from pressure from you guys, right? Pressure from me putting shit out on social media, us talking on the podcast, and pressure from you guys. The calls, the negative feedback that we're getting online. We want a statement. We want to know where you stand on this. And you have every right to know where your union stands on this, or a union that could affect your defined benefit. Where do you stand on this? Where are you going to vote? And, people are like, why do you need to know? I need to know because I'll tell you right now, because anyone that votes for it, I don't believe should ever be sitting in the position of a union president. And we will find out the bylaws and get enough members they need to enact another vote against them. So that's why we need to know, in case anybody was wondering. So Vinnie Valalong said that he went even further. He said not only is he not going to vote against it, he doesn't even believe it's in the best fiduciary interest of his members to vote with it. So that is an alarming statement. Now, Scott Monroe of the Detectives Endowment Association is hiding. He hasn't said a word. Lou Turco, same thing, hasn't said a word, even though there's a ton of heat on them. There needs to be a lot more heat on them. And then again, I'm going to say it, the most cowardly union that there could be is the Captains Endowment Association, because I think that they neuter executives. I think you guys get neutered. I think they pull your man card after you take that other exam. I don't know what happens. I don't know why Chris Monahan does not have his feet to the fire saying, where are you standing on this? Why haven't you put a statement out on this? And why these small unions like the LBA and the CEA even have a say, or the DEA even have a say in the overwhelming majority of what's happening, is a whole nother question. Right? You're going to affect our pension payment. You could affect our pension payments in the long term. And you're right, Eric. Everybody's very selfish, because all I hear from everyone is, no, I'm good. It's not going to affect my pension payment. Yeah, today it's not going to affect your pension payment. Maybe you're 80 and you don't care because you don't think you only got 5 years left on this earth, or 10 years, and you think that you'll be lucky enough where you won't have to deal with this looming crisis that's coming. Maybe you think so, but that's a super selfish move. I would think that you cared about members like you that came after you. I would think you want to protect that defined benefit that you currently live off of now. I do. Why don't you? And so all I keep hearing is, well, it's not going to affect my pension payment. It's not a big deal. I'm done. See you later. I don't care. It's like, no, well, it's not affecting it today, but it certainly will affect it tomorrow. And like we've already said for you, George Unk, every city and state that has done this has never recovered. I was also reamed out and called a conspiracy theorist and trashed for spreading misinformation and deemed a racist and a sexist and every other thing under the sun, because I said that we should never fund our own raises. I said that us dipping into our health savings account to fund our own raises is fiscally irresponsible, and it will make that healthcare savings account insolvent. And I had union presidents putting out emails saying that I was spreading misinformation. And what happened? 2 years later, your health savings account is gone. There's no money in it. Congratulations. You took a benefit up front and sold your future out, your medical needs out. You took this job you took this city job so that you'll always have health care. That's very questionable now. And if you ask anyone who talks to these union presidents, they'll tell you what the union presidents are saying. You know what it is, Mo? The health care, it's like a Ponzi scheme, Mo. It can't last. Well, guess what? The same's true for your pension.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I find very interesting about this is that the controller has a seat in terms of like the police pension fund, right? The controller has a position on there, and well, the controller also has a report out, right, that talks about New York's fiscal future, and it talks about this in the context of AI, right? But in that report, he also points out several things that's currently wrong with New York City. One of them being that New York City has the lowest reserves right now, and the rainy day fund being only 2% right now, right? Lowest reserves of all these major cities. And look, the next guy below us is Chicago. So
Shocker.
just to show you how bad it is, right? But let's go through certain aspects of that. This is the let me just pull this up. This is the page where he's talking about the decline in reserves, but he makes he makes a very good point here that I want to point out. And he says in this, it says about AI, right? He says AI could strengthen our economy, create new industries, and expand productivity, but it could also move quickly through the sectors that matter most to New York City's finance, including finance, professional services, technology, and office using industries. Right? It's important to keep in mind because, like I said before, the situation is a little different than the 1970s. Okay, one of those what's different is that in addition to what I mentioned before about China being now a competitor with America, AI is disrupting a lot of jobs. And the problem is that in New York City, 40 to 45% of the job market is made up of uh, white collar office jobs that are potentially being jeopardized now by AI, meaning that the usage of AI is going to you need less of those workers, right? So what's the point? What am I getting at here? Well, less workers, less tax revenue flowing into the ecosystem, and the comptroller points that out here. Okay, the comptroller did a review of well, they're also using Moody's Analytics, right? So they looked at 5 potential scenarios that could happen with AI, and out of the 5 potential scenarios, 3 of them are bad, right? And 2 of them are good. Number 1 and number 4 are the good scenarios, right? The problem here is even under the good scenarios, there's not enough income that there's not enough tax revenue that's going to come out of it, right? The tax revenue that comes out of it basically plugs the annual gaps that we're having right now. It doesn't factor in for, inflation and other unforeseen problems that are going to pop up. So why I'm bringing that up to you is because again, the city's on the hook for 39 billion in 5 years. Okay, now they're asking you to essentially be on the to essentially borrow more money from you and be on the hook for again, it'll be another 20 something billion if it's extended to 2037. And even in the good scenarios, which is this one and this one, you can see the revenue is not there. Okay, the revenue is not there. So again, that if your fiscally responsible friend keeps coming and asking you for money and he has no way of ever repaying that money, then that's not a loan. Okay, it's not a loan at that point. It's charity. Do you want to give charity with your pension funds, with your pension, with your retirement? No. And again, the comptroller himself points out in this report, I'll share the link in the chat, about the fiscal irresponsibility of the city, and he also warns in here about the potential problems that may be ahead in terms of uh, the budget and the pensions themselves. So
Obviously, this person is new to the chat, but thanks for being here today, George Unk 6762, or maybe you're not new, maybe you're one of these recurring trolls. I don't know, but let's have this conversation here. So, George, you said, but you are not portraying correctly. You're telling us we're not portraying this correctly. So I'd like to know, where are we disconnecting on this? Because if we're not portraying it correctly, what does correct look like? That's what you haven't told us at this point. So I'm always willing to have that conversation. Where is the disconnect here? If you tell us we're not portraying it correctly, the opposite would be how to portray it correctly. So what does that look like? If you could tell us what that looks like, I'd like to continue this conversation, because what we're saying is dead on accurate. That your pension, if not funded properly, is not healthy anymore, and it needs to be protected. So I don't understand where we've disconnected here. The pension should be protected. Now, if anyone thinks this can't happen, you need to pay attention to what has happened in big cities across this country. Because in many big cities across this country, the ultimate goal is not to cut education funding for politicians, not to cut when it comes to transportation, not to make cuts when it comes to all these programs that get them elected, especially when it comes to re-election. So who cares about pensions, right? Because, for instance, let's talk about New York City. If you're a New York City cop, I think it's less than 1/3 actually resides in the 5 boroughs. So who cares about the other 2/3 because they won't vote for you anyway. So if they tap into the pensions, this is a huge problem. What else could they tap into? Now, I believe everyone, again, I said that I believe this is magic money. Could they tap into your variable supplement? Could they tap into future funds? Sure. Could they tap into your medical? We've told you about that already. They absolutely can, and they're coming for your medical as we speak. So they're chipping away at you. When are cops going to pay attention? Well, again, I think it's very selfish. The conversation I had, we've mentioned today, the conversations I've had with cops is, well, am I getting my pension benefit at the end of the month? Is anything going to change? No. You still get your pension. Oh, I'm good. And they don't care to have that real conversation in depth of what's going on with this pension. Your pension has to be properly funded. And if you're active right now, you should be very concerned. You can't be, ignorance is not bliss. You can't just not pay attention and hope that John, Eric, and Marlon are going to be screaming enough for you and stomping their feet because the unions aren't doing it. 2 of them have taken a stance right now, but there are 5 unions. And the majority rules. So that means 3 out of 5 right now have not said a word, have been ghost and silence in this. You can't be silent in this. You can't wait to see what's going to happen. You can't wait at the bottom of a hill if there's an avalanche. Go, let me see what's going to happen if I'm going to get hit. No, you need to get the hell out of there. Well, when it comes to a bank, we're talking about a bank of your money. That money needs to be protected. We need men standing guard, figuratively speaking, to protect that money. And that should be the union. They should be standing guard and saying there's no way that you get into these pensions unless there's some deal worked out, like in the 70s, getting the variable supplement. But that's not what's happening right now. They're not saying, hey, the fund in the 70s, even though the city had suffered from a crisis, was heavily funded. It was healthy. They were able to take money from that and as a loan and give it back. And the agreement was, on top of that, was the variable supplement, which cops today are terrified to retire early or resign because they want that variable supplement. Think about how important that has become to them. So could this be affected in the long run? Could it affect your variable supplement? Absolutely. This is not a loan. They want to reduce your pension contributions. Now, I know politicians want to pretend they see the retirement. They see your pension as this pool of money that's just endless because the pension fund is huge. It's huge. There's so much money. It's a long-term investment. This is investment over time. But these short-term hits that they want to raid your pension have long-term effects. And you need to pay attention. If you're not paying attention, that's what's scary. So again, George Unk 6762, where are we wrong? Tell us. Show us what it looks like on the other side.
So here's the problem, right? Here's the problem. So George says, I have read this and you guys are not understanding what this is about. So George, one of the reasons I came out online and then started the podcast and doing this is because of what happened during the mandate. There was a lot of misinformation out there coming from the city and from the media that was being put out and was highly inaccurate. And everything that I was told to be spreading misinformation on came out to be actually more than true. Right. And so the reason that I did is, and I think I told the story on another podcast, but there's a verse in the Bible. I was reading the Bible one day because I was so frustrated with talking with elected officials and talking with executives in the New York City Police Department, attempting to get myself back to work and attempting to stop others from having to make the same decision that I had to make. And there was a line in there in the New Testament, and it was right after Jesus performed the Sermon on the Mount. And at the Sermon on the Mount, he gave a bunch of parables to people. And then after, the disciples came to him and they were like, why'd you talk to those people like that? You don't talk to us like that. And he said, to you, the kingdom of God's been given. They have eyes, but they don't see. They have ears, but they don't hear, nor do they understand. So what you don't understand, George, is how the unions and politicians view you and the media view you as an uninformed public. You'll believe what I tell you to believe. You'll believe this nonsense that logically and rationally makes zero sense other than the fact that I wrote it on paper an elected official told you it, and they gave you an unchallenged position from behind the podium. So I just want you to think about this, George. If you think this is a good deal, like Marlon just told you, they owe us $39 billion already. So, and why? You know, because in the past, we've invested in things like affordable housing with our pension money. And then they intentionally devalued the affordable housing that we held in our pensions. So was that fiscally sound to do? So that's like your friend who asked you for money. He's like, look, I got this great idea. Just lend me some money. We'll put your retirement on it. You're going to get yours. You're going to get yours. And then you lose your shirt. You lose everything. And now that same friend's coming back to you like, look, I got this great idea. And it's all I need is your pension money. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invest in affordable housing again. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. The one that I just lost the billions of dollars on, that one? That's the investment you want me to? Oh, absolutely, I'll do that. Oh, and you'll just give me a little benefit up front? So, look, if you support New York City being able to raise your pension fund again, access to your funds, even though Marlon showed you, and by the way, your friend's telling you, oh, yeah, I'll pay you back. But Marlon just showed you that even in his own trajectories, in his own business plan that he's presenting to you as to why you should loan him this money, he's not even going to be able to keep up with the budget, his own budgeting and his own finances. How is he ever paying you back? Right? And so you look at all this and I'm like, okay, do you think it's a good idea to invest in more affordable housing? Because that's where that money's going. Do you think it's a good idea to increase the funding of the crisis management system known as violence interventions, where these programs have zero metrics for success, where crime has risen wherever they've been implemented, where consistently the people that New York City's paying to work as violence interrupters or whatever fancy names they give them consistently get arrested for selling drugs, being involved in violence, and moving guns? Do you think that's a good idea to take this crisis management system that's over $100 million currently and increase that budget by 250% like Zohran Mamdani wants to do? Do you think that that's a good investment of your pension money because Zohran Mamdani does? I don't. Apparently, Scott Monroe, Lou Turco, and Chris Monahan think so too, because I haven't heard them say that they don't. So, and that's where I stand. That's my stance. Either you're for that or you're against it. And I need to know who stands where. And the reason I need to know who stands where, because anyone that's playing Switzerland in this time, to me, you're a coward, and you are going to be the reason why in the future, our defined benefit will be greatly reduced or taken away from us in total. So I'm trying to protect the fund, the health of the fund. That's why I call out the fraud that happens in the fund. It's not because I'm jealous of anyone, because I guarantee I'm way more fiscally responsible than the individuals that are benefiting greatly from fraudulent pensions. I guarantee I have a much better life than them. I have a much more financial health than they do. So it's not about jealousy. It's about I worked for something like thousands of other people, and I believed in a system, and I believe that system could still work if we just do the right things and we're smart about it, right? It's the reason I was able to maintain a household without having a pension or health benefits for 2 years. Same reason Marlon has been able to do that for almost 4 years now. So I don't understand what people aren't understanding. You know, we're explaining it to you. Open your mind up and listen. If you don't agree with it, you think we're wrong, it's easy. Click off.
Yeah, I'd like to know which part we're wrong. Okay. All right. If you're wondering why I keep talking about the AI part here, it's because I'm trying to explain to you that we're in a turning point in history where back in the 1970s, where it was blue collar jobs that were getting disrupted because of outsourcing, you know, the places like the Rust Belt were demolished because a lot of those jobs in production were moved. That was the beginning of them being moved out of this country, outsourced to the East, outsourced to South America and places like Mexico, right? So those regions were destroyed. But where did a lot of jobs come out of that? There was even more boom of white collar jobs, and more people moved, even more people moved from those areas into the cities. So that was the beginning of the shift, right? So what's happening now is kind of the opposite of that, where a lot of those white collar jobs in cities are getting disrupted. So with all that said, right, if the city is coming to you and telling you we need to borrow money, would you be willing to take the risk, considering that there's a lot of potential upheaval on the way for the job market in big blue cities? No, it's stupid. Okay. And so I went through a couple of studies, right? One of those is this from Anthropic themselves. And as you can see, the blue areas are those white collar jobs that are getting disrupted first, right? The further out this chart is, the blue area is the more disruption in that industry. I don't know if you guys could see it. It's kind of low. I'm going to, if you go to my Twitter, you'll see it also. But I'll try to post it if I have enough time. I'll try to post a link in the chat. But as you can see, the more physical labor your job has, which is blue collar jobs, the less likely you are to get disrupted. Whereas in the 1970s, it was the opposite. The more physical labor your job had attached to it, is the more likely, we're talking like factories here, factory labor and production, is the more likely your job was going to get disrupted in the coming years, because again, it was being outsourced. Now it's the opposite. AI is essentially disrupting a lot of the jobs that we have in cities. So there's a lot of upheaval coming there, and that upheaval is going to reflect onto the revenue, the tax revenue that cities get out of places like Wall Street. Just to go back to the comptroller's report that I talked about last go round, right? So in the comptroller's analysis, there's a 50-50 chance of this being negative for the city. Okay. So with those odds aren't odds that I'm going to go all in on anything, especially it, especially if that broke fiscally irresponsible friend is asking me for more money. Yeah. Right. But there's also a McKinsey report that I went through, and let me show you these charts quickly, that talks about upwards of 1 million jobs are going to be disrupted in the uh, New York metro area, which is, they're counting 12 million people. So that's 1 million jobs. All right. And as you can see, the top jobs are office support. It's all blue collar. It's all white collar jobs that are going to get disrupted the most. Right. And last thing I want to point out this go around is that, again, Mamdani's budget, right? They're counting on, and he's said it a couple times, right? But this article is indicating that he's counting on 1.64 billion in savings from restructuring the unfunded pension liabilities via deferring contributions to your pension. So he's counting on it in order to balance his budget. Okay. And let's see what else it says here. Right. So they talked. This article also touched on the fact that New York City right now is the most indebted city in the country. Okay, so not only do we have the lowest reserves, but we also you know, the most indebted. Now, on a per capita basis, we're a little bit lower down. But the point here is that things are kind of on shaky ground when it comes to the economy, and in that environment, I don't think it's fiscally responsible, okay, or for the pensions, for the pension funds to go along with this, okay. What's fiscally responsible for them in this situation is to push the city to cut the waste and fiscal malfeasance that they've had going on for certainly since Bloomberg left, okay? And to make further cuts so that we don't approach this cliff that is coming. Right.
According to the Fiscal Policy Institute, Zohran Mamdani's plan would save the city billions. It would be on the backs of retirees, it's on the backs of active members, and I don't just say cops because it's all those that are seeking a pension, city agencies, and anyone who wants to get into a city agency in New York City. Everyone could be affected by this. And ultimately, that's what I said before. This is even if it is a short-term reduction, it has long-term effects. Because the reason why the city's pension system is so large is because a long-term investment that takes over time, compounded interest upon compounded interest. Now, I often say opposition meets opportunity, and which is why I enjoy conversations. I'm always willing to learn something. So I say to George Unk, 6762, he said, nobody is borrowing from the pension fund. And you know what? I did learn something. I learned that you're right, George. No one is borrowing from the fund. You're absolutely right. That's the difference between in the 70s, 1970, which commenced the variable supplement. And the agreement was that they would borrow money from the pension and give it back. You're right. No one's borrowing it from right now. They want to reduce the contributions that are going into the system. As I said earlier, and I'd love to explain it to you again, George, because I don't think you're understanding, or maybe you are and you just don't want to have the real conversation. That's why I said if we're disconnecting here about the pension, then tell us what it looks like. And you're not telling us that. You're telling us that they're not borrowing from it, that we're not accurate. So tell us the opposite to that. What does that look like? If they're not borrowing from it, what does it look like? What we are telling you, and I'm telling you this again. If you tell me, Eric, no, they're borrowing from it, well, then you're not paying attention. Because what happened in the 70s is a complete distinction from what's happening right now. It's a complete dichotomy. So what are you saying here? A reduced contribution has major effects. And again, I said there's 5 unions. So 2 of them only have taken a stance. So that means the majority rules. The majority is saying, hey, it's okay to dip into these pensions. Don't you think the timing's impeccable that they want to extend the retirement age to 65 while they want to tap into your pensions? I mean, who benefits? Do you think Sector Adam is staying on the job till 65 years old? Do you think the 2 cops who are pushing a radio car, sweating their asses off in humidity in their early 40s, you think they want to stay on the job till 65 doing that? Who benefits? Who wants to stay on the job till 65? Maybe union board members that have steak dinners. Maybe union board members that go out in nice cars. Maybe they want to stay until they're 65 because clearly Sector Adam, who's pushing a radio car, answering jobs all day, hearing "suck my so-and-so," because that's what happens when you work in the New York City Police Department on the street. That's how people talk to you. Who's doing that job till 65? The only ones I see stay till 65 is older chiefs, someone that's in some office somewhere tucked away. I know a couple of people like that who've been on there forever. They call themselves cops. You're not a cop. You're an overpaid secretary. But also union board members that want to stay on this job till 65. So these great benefits that are coming, and these tier 2 benefits, who benefits? Really ask yourself, who benefits to stay until 65? Who benefits by coming on this job past 42 years old? And exactly spot on, John. They want to turn it into just a job, not a viable career. They don't want young men getting on the job. They just want people coming on, just a job. They want to tap into your pension and have a reduced pension fund. These short-term hits have long-term effects. So George Unk 672, you still have not proven your case to me. So at this point, it falls flat on its face. So I asked myself, George, who are you? Are you in a union?
I mean, look, it's just insanity to be like, look, them taking money from our pension fund isn't a big deal. And like, I don't know another better way to put it. And like, listening to what Marlon did in his research, I mean, it should send hairs down all of your spines. I don't have hair on my head. So, but if I did, it would be standing up as Marlon was speaking, because, what also it is, it's like, all right, not only are you lending money to your friend who never paid you back, and every investment, who already still owes you money, and every investment he's ever given you cost you money, but you lost your shirt, you lost all of your money, you lost all of your investment money. Not only is it that, but hey, guess what? Your friend this time wants another large chunk of money and he's telling you that more than likely he won't have a job by the time he needs to pay you back. So it's really like, this isn't really up for even discussion, in my opinion. The fact of the matter is this: I just need to know where these union representatives stand. For me personally, I'm in the police pension fund, but if I'm a member of the city, I need to know, whoever guides your pension fund, I need to know what all of those unions that are involved in your specific pension fund, where they stand. Because to me, it's a no-brainer. It should be absolutely not. You're not getting anything, and I keep hearing misinformation being spread out. And I know it's coming right from the top of these unions. Like, yeah, Mo, we're working on, maybe we'll get you guys something for healthcare, or maybe, we're going to get you guys another variable supplement. We'll see, we don't know what we're going to do yet, Mo. And all that's trickling down to, oh, it's not a big deal because we're getting, we're going to get another variable. And that's not being negotiated at all. And again, if it is, it should be transparent. The fact that Lou Turco is silent, Chris Monahan's silent, and Scott Monroe is silent means one thing to me. They support this, and they're wavering on the possibility that they will, in fact, vote yes on this. And the fact that the Sergeants Benevolent Association and the PBA came out so strongly and said that they wouldn't tells me that they don't want anything to do with that, and they don't want their names attached to that, when in fact, all of the stuff that we're discussing on this podcast comes home to roost in less than 10 years. We're not talking about right now. That's what everyone's missing. We're not talking about today. We're talking 10 years from now. We're talking 10 years from now. But today, it's the dumbest shit you could ever do. It'll be like, oh, you didn't think that was going to happen to you? You didn't think that was going to happen to you? And for the rest of you talking about Mamdani, this was a problem you were having. This is a result of Bill de Blasio. This is a result of Eric Adams. This will be a result of Zohran Mamdani. It would have been a result of Andrew Cuomo. And if Sliwa wasn't fiscally responsible, it would have fell on him too. So this was a problem that was coming. This was a problem years in the making. And now we have I don't know if you guys seen that Mamdani, he's starting Coj, which is Doge, basically. Basically the Office of Government Efficiency in New York City. But he's spending money like a drunken sailor, and he can't rein in his own budget on his first year. So government efficiency, and you're increasing CMS spending by 250%, and you're increasing affordable housing where it's been all negative investments so far to date, and you're spending all of this frivolous money to all of these programs that are non-transparent, but yet you call them evidence-based. Evidence-based program, all of these programs for the homeless, all of these programs for the mentally ill, $220 million to an office of 2 people, $280 million to another office of 4 people. This is for racial equity. This is a joke, people. Like, are you really investing in this? Would you invest your own savings in it? Because if you would invest your own 457 or your own retirement plan savings into these plans, let me know. I need to know who you are, because I need to know to never go into business with you, but to make sure I'm selling good products to you, because you're too stupid. You're too stupid. A fool and his money will soon part ways. And honestly, anyone in support of this, you stand on the fool part.
Yeah. I think George said that it's not borrowing money. Well, the thing is, it is, because that money is already owed to the fund. Okay, and what they're doing is they're kicking the can down the road. So it's borrowing from your future to pay for their budget boondoggle now. Okay, and the problem is that sets up later on a austerity measures and pension reform, and that's going to come because that money that the city is already owed you is going to balloon even further, and there won't be any solution to it. And the only other solution will be, like I said, they're going to hold the threat of potential bankruptcy over your heads like the sword of Damocles, and tell you, hey, we should accept the city's terms now, because if they declare Title IX bankruptcy, the courts, the decision out of that is going to not be favorable to us. Okay, so let's take the city's terms. That's what I think is coming. So I again, it's a bad idea for the city to be involved in this period. And again, you're not the city could promise you whatever they want right now. The problem is that they've shown a complete misunderstanding of budgeting, right? And spending money. They spend money like a drunken sailor, okay? And with that, should you take anything they say, as their word? Because they currently can't manage the budget. So they could promise you whatever they want, okay? They could promise a pension boost or whatever. The problem is you got to pay for it later on. And later on, right, with the where we're headed right now, later on they're going to readjust the pension. It's going to happen. And you'll never see that boost to begin with. So why even go down that road? You know? Um yeah, it's a boondoggle, and again, I hope that this doesn't we don't head down this road, because it's never worked out for any of the other places that have done it, you know?
So, George, I'm glad we're having this conversation, right? So it's an adult conversation. So George asked, "Do I know what is the UAL?" That's a great conversation. So when I realized you're trying to make the correlation, saying this is not borrowed money, that this is UAL. So what is UAL? I've spent, again, I said it earlier, and I'm not blowing smoke at your ass. I spent a majority of my career diving into the pensions. I wanted to understand the pension system myself, because I went to the pension seminars and they don't tell you anything. All they told us at the time, maybe it's changed, was jump into ITHP, which increased take home waiver, and get the 50% additional. Great. But they don't explain to you how a pension is funded. So what's a UAL? It's a unfunded accrued liability. What is that?
It's a loan.
What's that?
It's a loan.
Exactly. So
it's a wordplay. It's a vehicle to get money. I mean, come on, dude. Like he's a union cuck, bro. That's all he is. He's playing wordplay, pretending like, no, taking money from the pension isn't a pension loan. What do you know what a UAL is?
So yeah,
you know what
exactly.
FU is, George?
So a UAL is unfunded accrued liability. What is that? So there is always a UAL in the pension. There's always a UAL, an unfunded accrued liability. There's always, and what is that? It's a gap between the payouts to the retirees and what's it being invested in the pension. And there is always a UAL, which is an unfunded accrued liability. There's always a gap, but that gap can be fed because it's a long-term investment, which was what we've been telling you. But what if that UAL becomes 15 billion, 20 billion, because they're taking money from it and you're getting reduced contributions? So money's being paid to retirees, but less money's going in there, which we've been explained to as a Ponzi scheme. Now that UAL is just gigantic, how does the city come back and pay $20 billion into that UAL? So this is a loan that will never be paid back. That's my question. And, George, to your point, a UAL, and I want to pretend let's pretend George, it really is a trooper and George really cares, because this gives us an opportunity to educate so that our active cops and retirees are actually listening. It's all built on a Ponzi scheme. There's always a gap in your pension. That's why it doesn't matter over long term. But if that gap increases to a point that cannot be replaced, then that pension is screwed. Look at other cities where this has happened to. So I'm glad you mentioned that. If that UAL, and I know you want to try to use wordplay that, hey, these guys, I'll trip them up. They have no idea. Do you think that we decide to talk about things to blow smoke up your ass? That's the difference. We're going to tell you the truth here. So that gap, if that gap becomes 15 billion because they're paying retirees, but money's not going in, what's going to happen then? How are they going to pay retirees? How is the city one day going to say, hey, you know what? In 20 years from now, whoever that may or may be says, Zohran Mamdani years ago had this plan and he took money from the pension and they owe 15 billion. Where did they get that 15 billion from? Please. I want to know, George, you explained it. I want to know if that gap gets to 15 billion, how does that get replenished? Because yes, a UAL is an unfunded accrued liability. Ultimately, it's a gap. So treat it like a mortgage. If you decide, you know what, John, maybe Marlon, we all decide, no, I don't want to. I'm in an RV right now, so I don't have to worry about it. But you both are homeowners right now, and you're like, you know what, I'm not going to pay my mortgage. Let's see how that goes for 6 months. Does that go away? In 6 months from now,
yeah, but
what?
it's not a loan. It's not a loan, Eric. I'm just diverting funds away from my mortgage, and I'll pay it 5 years from now. But that's not a loan, though. It's a traditional definition.
It's just
of
a
loan.
UAL, John.
It's just a UAL. You know, it's just an unfunded liability that I have in my mortgage. I mean, come on, dude. Taking money away from our pensions is taking money away from the pension, however you wrap it up. Whatever financial vehicle you like to call it, how you like to define it, that's on you. That's fine. And you know, I'll just push back on one thing. I don't think there'll always be an unfunded liability there. I think that it should be funded. The problem is right now the city already owes us billions of dollars. You know what I mean? They already owe us billions of dollars, and now they want to owe us. They're like, let me just add on to the tab.
John, my point to that is, so if you look historically over time, there's always some form of UAL, which means there's a gap because of the way it works out with the investments. Sometimes the investments are there lower, and the retirees are getting more payouts than the investments. But it works itself out because it's a long-term investment. But what he's talking about is a UAL that can't be replenished. So I almost think that, George, you're gaslighting anyone that you explain this to. You're actually feeding them wrong information.
You know, in 2022, the summer of 22, I had a conversation with, and it still kind of haunts me till today, because it was two guys that I really respected. They were lieutenants, and you know, I was really up in arms about the mandate. And I was talking about the future of removing due process and what that looks like for us in the future and our children and current employees, how I would be forced out of my career, how it would lead to people being terminated. And, you know, they both told me at that time, I don't care about no vaccine. I don't care about that mandate. If that's what they want us to do, that's what we got to do. Basically throwing out the United States Constitution out of the window. And I was furious. And I said to both of them, and I love them, and I didn't mean it, but I meant it. I didn't mean it to hurt them, but I meant it to just tell the truth. And I was furious. And I was like, you don't care about if they force you to put something in your body? And they said, no. I said, you don't care if they force me to put something in my kid's body that they don't need, and they could just tell me that I have to do it? You don't care about that? And they said, no. And I said, you know, you guys won already. Of course you don't care. You should be dead. You're playing on borrowed time right now. You shouldn't even be here anymore. You're going to tell me not to worry about the future of my kids and not to worry about the future of my country because you're selfish? I'm like, you're going to be dead in 3 years. You're going to be dead in 3 years. And we're still going to go on. There's generations past you, but you're only concerned about the here and now. And that was the last conversation I had with them. And they're both dead today. And I, you know, it sucks because the truth is a horrible thing. I told them the truth that day. I didn't love them any less. You know, I disagree with people often. And it doesn't mean that I hate them or I hold contempt in my heart for them. But that was a true statement then. And it's all relative to the conversation that we're having here now. You know, I'm talking you. You know, the thing is, like I said, your unions and your politicians look at you in an uninformed public. You know, when you go in to buy a car and you deal with a car salesman or you deal with a leasing broker or a general manager, what they attempt to do is put pressure on you, right? Marlon referenced it. He called it the sword of Damocles, right? Where they want to hang this impending doom over your head. You got to make this deal right now. If you don't make this deal right now, this is going away. I could only offer you. You just got to sign on this paper. And that's kind of how they lead you, is because they know that you're an uninformed public and they know that they could scare you in the present to give up your future. And I think if you're not concerned about that with what we just discussed, and you believe that the unions did a good job and you should do this, then listen, hey, more power to you. I don't think we'll be friends in the future because I'm 100% positive that if we allow this to go forward, every single member that was every single New York City employee, retiree or present, when they're alive in 10 years, will live to regret this moment in time.
Yeah, I just want to say, Mom, before you go, I just think people are not understanding. How about, okay, you're in New York. Why don't you look at a neighboring state? New Jersey, for instance. Maybe if you look at a neighboring state, maybe you could understand that. Because for some people, they hear Chicago, Detroit, that's a little distant for them, and they don't pay attention to it. So let's go over to New Jersey. New Jersey State Police was a fund that was shorthanded for decades. It was not funded properly for decades. And so what happens? The Jersey State Police, they were still funding that, right? They're working. In 2011, you know what happened? Retirees lost their costing of living allowance. They had COLA. All New Jersey State Police pensions had COLA. In 2011, because it wasn't funded properly for decades, they lost their cost of living allowance. And people at the time thought that nothing could happen in New Jersey. So they lost their cost of living allowance in 2011. If you want, you can look it up. Just Google it. Take a look. That's your neighboring state. To get an idea of what could happen, their cost of living allowance suffered because their UAL was far too big. There's way too much of a gap to fund that gap. Not alone. Doesn't go back. You lose that money, it's gone. It's gone. You can't build it. It's gone forever.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I don't think it's worth gambling your future, because think of it, you don't want this adjustment when you're in your 70s. Your 70s, you don't want to have to go back to the workforce when you're an old man. I just don't think this is a good idea. And we've been talking about this for a while because we kind of knew this was coming. And like John said, many people call us crazy. Like, what are you talking about? Our pensions are guaranteed. And the thing is, just like during the scamdemic, there are a lot of people who now regret it, right? A lot of people now regret it. And a lot of those people were the same people who told us you're crazy when we told them not to take it. So we're not tooting our own horn here, but the writing's on the wall, and it's there needs to be a pushback now, unlike back during the scamdemic. Because if we go down this road, again, we don't want to be working when we're in our 70s, right? Or 80s. So
Hey, John, you gotta respond to this one. Even though we know it's Jack, it's Joe 689914% says, "Why didn't you sue the NYPD if the vaccine mandate was illegal?" Are you serious, John? You want to take a stab at that? Because I think you explained this 8,000 times. I'm just
look. I don't even want anyone to detract what we're talking about, but my lawsuit is still active. So anyway, Joe, do me a favor, go fuck yourself. All right. Anyway, so that's one question. You could, like I said, I could come down to South Florida. We could have a meeting in Wall Street. Whatever you like to do, let me know. I think more importantly is if you look at who is this? My eyesight's going. Matty Fisano, I believe. Apologize, I can't see too good anymore. I got to get a bigger screen. I ordered it. It's on the way. So remember 2030, and thank you, Matt, for this, because this is a real sharp point that I think that we're looking past you, right? I see right through Scott Monroe. I see right past him staying on 65, right past Lou Turco, right past Chris Monahan. I see right through them all the way 10 years down the road, right? And so does Matt. So he says, remember, 2030, all pensions are up for legislation vote changes in Albany. They are pushing this can down the road to create a storm to justify the change in 2030.
Yes.
This is a Trojan horse coming. Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it. Because that's what, people rely on that state constitution as it's an end all be all, and it's not. 2030, it's up for change. And now, if we have at that point, because we kept giving to our friend who doesn't have a job and who never pays us back, and we invest in all his investments that always fail, now our pensions are insolvent. What do you think the taxpayer is going to do? Because I'll tell you right now, I know plenty of people in the business world. They hate that we have pensions, and I understand it. because they don't understand it. They're like, I don't have a pension. I don't care, because we're human. We're all selfish as individuals. Like, look, we're either going to have to raise your taxes, or we're going to have to make sure John Shell gets over $30,000 a month in his disability insurance. Guess how everyone in New York's going to vote? They're going to say, yeah, get rid of that mother effer's pension. Get rid of that mother effer's pension right now. He should have saved up all his money. It's not even what I make in a year, And so, that's the thing, is what we're talking about. And me specifically, I believe in my heart that Chris Monahan, Lou Turco, and Scott Monroe haven't made a statement on this because they already made the deal. Why do I believe that? And I think the rest is true for the rest of your unions. I think anyone, because like, look, I'll give credit to the trooper, or whatever his name is. I can't remember what his name is, but the guy that was interacting with us on here today. I'll give credit to him for coming on here and bringing his points. But unlike you, the unions that you're protecting are unwilling to have this conversation and answer these questions. They're unwilling to go on record about it. And why are they unwilling to go on record? If it's such a great deal, they should be able to sit there and openly explain it and say, you know what? Those three guys have no clue what they're talking about. This is why we're going to do it. And this is what we're going to get for it. And don't worry about the future, because I don't care, because, hey, I'll be dead in 10 years anyway. That's what they should really tell you, But the reason I believe they already made the deal is because, in fact, Zohran Mamdani is kind of saying that they did. Listen to him. He says it here. Listen to what he says.
The governor's office said that they still have not gotten language from you on the pensions amortization and on class size funding, and that has contributed to this budget delay. So why haven't you sent that language yet? And if I could also just quickly ask the speaker, I know you called for PTET in your budget response, but you had also said that the budget gap could be closed without, sort of separate from that, that the gap could be closed without those kinds of revenue measures. So is this, or does this represent any kind of a shift in your thinking?
So I'll go first on the first question. I'll pass it over to the speaker. When it comes to the restructuring of the city's pension liabilities, or when it comes to the class size mandate, these are both conversations that we are having with our partners in organized labor. And we're having it with them to develop this language and put it forward. We're confident of the productivity of those conversations.
So he's happy with the conversations they're having. They're all denying that they met with him, by the way. But yet FDNY is getting bills rammed through. NYPD is getting bills rammed through. Guess who's at the head of that? The person standing right to Mayor Mamdani's left, Julie Menon. All of a sudden, they're getting a fifth firefighter on the fire truck. That's going to cost the city about, I forget how much. I think it's like $800 million. I forget the exact amount of money, $891 million. Rammed through, no problem. Everything's getting rammed through city council while he's saying this. We already had the meetings with your unions, but I guarantee you, if you talk to them, no, we didn't have no meetings. They're snakes. They're snakes. I believe they already made a deal, and every single day that they don't put out a statement, they're going to get a video, and they should have people responding and calling them. I know a lot of people keep asking me, could you put a petition together? You know what? I've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. I'm busy all day. I have a life too. I have children. I don't get paid for any of this stuff. So no, I'm not going to put a petition together. But what you could do is advocate online the same way I'm doing. And you could call your unions and say that you do not want this to happen, or you want an explanation on why it should happen. If it was such a good deal, Scott Monroe, Lou Turco, and Chris Monahan would be on here right now, smacking us around on this podcast, telling us how we don't know what we're talking about, and explaining to everybody why it was such a good deal and why it was so beneficial.
Yeah. So that was in late April. That was around April 28th, I believe, when Speaker Menin and Mayor Zohran had a press conference to announce the budget delay, right? And keep in mind now that the Adams administration, since I believe it was 2024, I believe it was the fall 2024, we're trying to change the amortization schedule of the pensions. And I posted up a video of it on Twitter back then too. There was a video from the pension funds YouTube. account. There was a video from that meeting itself, and they talked about changing the amortization schedule. So the point I'm making here is that this was in the cards for a while, largely because the Eric Adams administration talked for a while about the fiscal problems that were ahead. And even as he continued to spend billions on illegals, by the way, but he also talked about one of the problems was the fixed costs, and he talked about how they have no control over that, which, by the way, goes back to what we've said before, that the scamdemic and the fact that me and John were pushed out was because it was a budget measure. Okay, it was an illegal measure to quickly cut the fixed costs of the city, right, and get us off payroll. So yeah, I'm bringing that up because this was in the cards, and that video that John played, Mamdani, in that video, he also downplayed what Speaker Menin said about raising revenue through the tickets and the camera enforcement. He basically said that's not going to be enough money, to cover the budget shortfall. And then, interestingly enough, he mentions pension deferment, the contribution deferment hit, and that already tells you where their mindset is, and that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, because again, it's about let me see, it's about one fifth or one fourth, depending on how you calculate it, of the annual budget is made up of pension contributions and benefits. So we told you before that they're targeting us for a reason. Okay, and we're seeing it now, clearly in all that's happening. So
Yeah, I think I want to say also, George, this is what I often say about opposition meets opportunity. I want to thank you for having an adult conversation, because that's what's important for us, to have an adult conversation. And ultimately what you said is you agree, right? And not necessarily agree with our takes on this, but you agree that you want the same outcome, is that you care about the pension fund. So for that, I appreciate it. We have an adult conversation. And, I'd love to hear about, because the New York State troopers have had some real success with their pension. So Mike Freed said maybe we should have someone here who is a New York State trooper on this pension. Mike Freed, how you doing, brother? Great friend to the network. That's actually a great idea. So George, why don't you contact us if you were a trooper, if you're retired, not if you're active, if you're retired, and we can have you on one day and discuss some of the successes that the New York State troopers have had. And I think that's a great distinction between what's happening with the New York City Police Pension Fund. Now, even a one-time payment or one-time reduction, these short-term hits, is a bad idea for the pension, because it has long-term effects. That's what I've been trying to say. If you have an opportunity, just look at so many pension states that have been affected in the same manner. Illinois, right? We're talking about Chicago. What happened? Just complete disaster, right? Detroit, Michigan. Take a look at that. Take a look at Connecticut. That's another state that had some real issues with pensions. Again, I said, take a look at New Jersey, your neighboring state, right? So New Jersey, New York City, and Connecticut. We're talking about the tri-state area. Look at Kentucky. That's another state that has some real pension issues. Again, where politicians have raided into these pensions because of the failures that they've had in their own municipalities with their own funding, and they relied on the pension. So the people that do the most for their cities and their states, first responders, people that are in city agencies, state agencies, have paid the price. Now, I've heard the same thing. A lot of people say, oh, that's a great pension. And unfortunately, there are people that are out there that are being greedy, just like John Shell. I mean, honestly, who needs $30,000 a month? I'm sure people look at that like, they don't need pensions. But the reality is the majority of retirees of the New York City Police Department are not getting $30,000 pensions. That's an anomaly, right? Those are for the chiefs that go 3/4 disability pensions, which is why there really needs to be an audit and a forensic analysis of chiefs that are getting 3/4 disability pensions, because it really does affect the system here. Especially we talk about pensions for people that are making $30,000 a month because of a 3/4 injury. What is that injury? What is their disability? What is their limitations? Because if they were able to work until 62 or 63 years old, or out there in the streets or wearing that uniform, what is their 3/4 disability? In my opinion, that 3/4 disability, I'm not saying should bar you from any future employment, but it sure should bar you from doing police work. But yet we have people on the job that have claims, and they stay on the job 10 years past, and then they retire and get some crazy pension, a disability pension. There really needs to be a forensic audit into that as well. And the silence that we hear from Turco and from the CEA and from the DA on this is absolutely insane. They should be stomping their feet so loud. That is their job. Their job is to protect you, protect their members, those that want to get on the job, those that are on the job, and especially retirees that work their asses off to get those pensions. And for many people out there who feel, oh, the pension system, oh, God bless you. Well, then if you want a pension, then go out there, be a New York City cop. Put your life on the line. Be a firefighter. Be a teacher. Having the stresses of a teacher. Be a sanitation man. Having to do a hard-nosed job like that. That's why they get those pensions, because they earned it and deserved it. Because working in city agencies, it's like dog years. It's not an easy life, right? Look at the cops right now about to face 12-hour tours. 12 hours is a lot, especially most of the cops live outside the city. An hour and a half to 2 hours with that commute getting to work, an hour and a half to 2 hours getting home after a 12-hour day, and only sleeping a couple hours and coming back. That's why they get pensions, because they deserve it. They work hard. And I'm not saying people don't work hard in other industries and private industries, but that's why you have a 401k where it's funded and you have the ability to, you have the ownership. That's the difference between a 401k and a pension. That pension is governed by the city and the board members. And when you have a 401k, you own those investments yourself. So it's far different. But again, I believe if you're working in a city agency, in any city in this country, you deserve a pension, because the support of the city, the back is on you.
Oh, you're muted, John.
Yep. Got him.
Yeah, you didn't get nothing. I'm producing back here as well as
Easy, Jack.
you guys mute without even doing anything in the background. So
I'm not muted today.
So what was I saying? I said the other thing you got to look at is like how fast all this stuff is coming to fruition, So I'm going to predict the future again for you guys. You ready? You ready? We could look back on this. I'll give it about a year before this prediction comes out. You ready? So the super speeders bill was rammed through, which means if you get over 16 camera tickets in New York State to your registration, doesn't mean you were ever behind the wheel. You're not going to get a point on your license. The sheriff's going to come. Our new sheriff, Edwin Raymond, we'll discuss in a little while. He's going to come and he's going to ensure that you install this device into your vehicle that's going to limit your speed to the speed limit, depending upon on the road that you're on. Now, the follow-up legislation to that is going to be they're going to seek to lower the speed limit across New York City to 20 miles per hour, which means you're going to be a super speeder if you do 31 miles per hour on a busy road. Are you technically a reckless super speeder? No, but Streets Blog will paint you as that. And New York State will force you, and New York City will force you to put this device into your vehicle. Why are they doing that? Because they want to make money off of that. The other thing that you got to look at is how bad the state's doing, because the 1127A, correct me if I'm wrong, people, I never lived outside of New York City while I was on the job, but there is a waiver where city workers had to pay some type of certain tax to. All of a sudden this year, they all got audited, and they're saying, well, we could go back all these years. You haven't been paying it, but from this year forward, you owe us this amount of money. And guess what? You're going to pay it every year going forward. And that's all to try to fill the budget gap. I believe it's the 1127A waiver. And I think that's what the city's coming. I'm not 100% on it. But
it's the 1127 waiver. You're right.
Okay. So a lot of people are getting hit with bills. I mean, everyone, basically, if you work for New York City, but you live outside of New York City, everyone is now getting hit with that tax. and it's coming out. And so you got to understand what's happening. All of the signals are signaling exactly what we're saying. They'll never be able to pay this money back because they're fiscally irresponsible. They're hurting. And I mean, I really got nothing else on the pension, dude. I think if you think it's a good idea, I want to hear from it. If you don't have nothing to say on it, you want to play Switzerland, that means that you support it, and I will treat you as you're a member that supports it. And so right now, Scott Monroe, Lou Turco, Chris Monahan, if you haven't been on notice this last week, you are on notice. We will be advocating against you every day until you come out and make a statement on whether or not you support this. And if in fact you do, we want to know why. We want to know why, because it affects all of us as members of the Police Pension Board, regardless of our unions. And I'm calling on every other New York City employee to do the same thing for all of the unions that count on their vote towards their pension. This is not a joke, people. It's not.
Yeah. And tell your firefighter buddies that they're absolutely insane to go forward with this, okay?
Yep.
I mean, look at their funding ratio.
Yep. Way underfunded.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have much to say on this either. I think the point is made that the future a lot of jobs are getting disrupted now. There's a lot of economic uncertainty in the future. And if we're going forward with this, we're basing it on a lot of assumptions, and you're taking a gamble here, especially considering the comptroller himself is saying that there's a 50-50 chance that AI is going to disrupt the New York City job market, and the tax revenue, it's going to hurt the tax revenue. Okay. So it's a gamble, and we don't want to put you don't want to put your futures in jeopardy here. Okay. Last thing I'm going to say on this is that we're talking now about unfunded pensions, but we're soon going to be talking about funded pensions, because the Wall Street also wants to take the money that you already have invested and invested in their boondoggles. Okay. And I'm not a Luddite here. Tech is good, but the problem is that there's a lot of losses in the private industry. And the danger is here that the pension funds are going to be the bag holder of a lot of those losses. So this is a future fight that's coming as well.
Listen, I think we hit all the points that are important. We show the comparisons to New York City and New York State, to comparison what's happened in other cities and other states around this country. So, excuse me. If you're a friend listening to the network, I really appreciate it. You need to take a look and educate people that are out there. If they're watching the show and they're giving us opposition because they think their pension is impervious, well, you need to educate them on what's going on. And the reality is, what's happened in other states and cities can happen in New York City. And I'm glad we spoke about the UAL, which is the unfunded accrued liability, a gap that is always there. But if the gap gets so huge, it can't be replaced. It just can't be put back. If that gap ends up becoming $15 billion, they can't replace it. They just can't. And ultimately, that gap depends on what's being paid out to retirees and how much money is going to that system. So people have to pay attention. Keep in mind, it's also a diminished profession. So as this becomes a diminished profession, that means less cops are actually paying into the pension. When less cops are paying into the pension, that means there's less city contributions. Again, as I said earlier, the pension system is all one pool investment, and it depends on three things: the cops paying into it, the city contributions, and the investments that are being made, which is why John's always telling you about, hey, look at these politicians and comptrollers that are making these bad investments, because that's what's important, part of the pension pool itself. So I think we gave a lot of good information here. George, again, thank you for the conversation. I'm glad we brought up UAL. Very important cops actually dive into it to understand. Again, take a look at the New Jersey State Police. Take a look at how their pension was affected, the neighboring state. I think that's a great point. Check out in 2011 how they lost their cost of living. I think that is probably the best example, especially for someone that's in New York right now. So, I think that this is a great topic, and let's jump to the next one. Let's talk about Edwin Raymond, man. Listen, I just want to say congratulations to him getting appointed as the sheriff. Now, I Most things I don't agree with Edwin Raymond. There are some things I agree with, and I hear him, talk about certain things. I would say most things I don't. There's a lot of stuff I do agree. But one thing I have to say is I respect him because I know who he is. And I know he comes from a place of truth, his truth. And I want to congratulate him. And at least he's authentic. Like I said, I don't always agree with his takes, but I respect him because when we have a conversation at the table, I know who he is. And I'm not concerned that he's hiding food under the table, as figuratively speaking. I know that he presents himself and he's honest about it. So Edwin Raymond, shout out to you, brother. I think it's a good appointment. John, what are your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm definitely not opposed to it. I had a lot of people messaging me yesterday and calling me. You think it's a good appointment? What's his qualifications? And I was like, I'm not even going to get into it. I was like, just first, before you ask me that question, you tell me what Anthony Miranda's qualifications were. I mean, you tell me what Anthony Miranda's qualifications were. And then, other than Anthony Miranda, I think if you look at Zohran Mamdani, if you look at Bill de Blasio, if you look at Eric Adams, tell me what their qualifications ought to be a mayor. I'll tell you what their qualifications ought to be a mayor. If you ever read the book, The Godfather, if you're a fan of The Godfather, and even if you're not, you never really seen it, I highly recommend that you read the book. Highly recommend. And there's actually, read the book, and then there's actually like an audio narration that you could listen to for free on YouTube too, where they actually play the roles. They have characters playing the roles of the book, The Godfather, because the book is significantly different from the movie in the fact that it's a lot longer and it dwells into the characters a lot more, like who they are. There are characters in the Godfather that they're in like a few scenes for a few seconds, but the book has chapters on them, or at least a chapter on them. And one of the statements that was made in there in that book was, and it always rings true to me when I look at a politician, and it said, and it talks to qualifications. It says, I do not entrust the safety of my family to the government. I do not put the safety and future of my children in a man's hands whose only qualification is that he was able to con a whole block of people into voting for him. And so when we talk about qualifications, it's a real slippery slope, right? Because what qualified Kaz Daughtry to be a detective? There was certainly nothing that qualified him to be a deputy commissioner or assistant commissioner. There was certainly nothing a second grade detective or a first grade detective, So, what are Edwin Raymond's qualifications? The fact that he was an NYPD lieutenant, I think is good enough for me. And, anyone that's on the job should probably be good enough for you, because then you're shitting on yourself if you don't believe so. You're saying that your experience in the New York City Police Department was nothing. Being able to manage a ton of people in the most diverse, most craziest city there is on earth, operating in the New York City Police Department for over a decade. If that's not an accomplishment, I don't know what is. For nearly 2 decades. And the thing with Edwin is, I've debated Edwin Raymond publicly several times. He's been on this podcast before. I most often have debated Edwin Raymond in private and continue to do so. And, if Edwin Raymond was appointed the police commissioner, I'll tell you right now, there'd be a lot of comments that I would have more, because I think that what he's asking of the New York City Police Department, Mamdani, are no-goes for me at all whatsoever. And I don't care who takes that position. I will be in direct opposition to them. And I do consider Edwin Raymond a friend, because I know Edwin Raymond, a couple of things about Edwin Raymond. He's a man of character. He's not afraid to say what he speaks. I'm consistently called a racist by the entire department. So is Edwin Raymond. And I don't think either of us are racist at all. We may be opposite ends of the spectrum politically. I may not agree with him politically. And if there are things that Mamdani requires him to do that I think are wrong, and I see movement and communication coming out of that office that I think are wrong, I'm going to publicly say it. I'm not going to shy away from, just because I'm friendly with Edwin Raymond, to say it publicly and privately. It's just who I've transformed into over time. And I'm not a politician, and I'm not looking for a job from Mamdani, and I'm not looking for a job from anybody. You know what I mean? So I'm just telling the truth. I think that the system's broken right now. And I think, like I've been taught in my religion, the only way to the Father is with the truth. That's the only way to the light. And so I've been living in that, and I've been saying what I believe to be true. And a lot of people are in opposition to that. Edwin Raymond is often in opposition to that. But I do think it's a good employment. I don't think Edwin Raymond will steal money. I don't think we have to worry about Edwin Raymond pushing an invisible COVID vaccine mask. I don't think we have to worry about Edwin Raymond not vouchering contraband. And I also don't think we should worry about Edwin Raymond doing anything that violates his own conscience or that he believes go against his own will. And I do believe he is a person of character because of that. And everyone's like, oh, well, it's going to be different now that he's a sheriff and he has a $200,000 job. I don't think so. I think it's much harder younger on in your career when you're just a cop or you're just a sergeant to push back at the system. And while a lot of the things Edwin said when he pushed back at the NYPD, I did not agree with, I also believed he was very brave for saying it, because some of the things he did say, I believe, were nothing but the truth. And so I think he pointed to a system. I think he fought back a system, and I think he's a person of character. I support the appointment, and I think for a fact that Miranda should have been removed in 2024 when I started putting videos out about him at that public safety hearing in front of city council, where he was saying that they don't confiscate money, but yet I was posting videos of him confiscating money out of businesses. And then we come to find out that his office was raided and he had hundreds of thousands of dollars in a safe. So how he stayed on throughout the entire Eric Adams administration and wasn't removed the first day of the Zohran Mamdani administration will always boggle my mind. So yeah, I support it. I wish Edwin Raymond luck. And, we will continue to hold Edwin Raymond like any other elected and appointed official that comes on this podcast, that's been on this podcast, that we consider friends privately. We will consider to hold them strictly accountable, and we will continue that friendship of being dead honest with each other. So yeah, I don't know what you think about it, Marlon.
Yeah, we put up the incident John is referring to about the money and the weed seizures. We put up a video of that. It's a rewind of when it first happened, and John and Eric were talking about it. And yeah, the sheriff, I think with Edwin, we're going to get a lot more disciplined and competent sheriff's office, right? There's no doubt in my mind that's what's going to happen. But I'm a little cynical about his appointment, because I think a lot of the reforms that Edwin wanted, it would be, I think would be best suited for the police department itself, that he had a role in the police department. No, don't get it wrong. I don't agree with him on everything, There are certain things we both agree on, which was the obsession with numbers, in the Kelly era and in 2000s. I think that was wrong. And I've already told you many times how that led to low-hanging fruit enforcement. And I just had a problem with that. And most of the cops around me, the rookies, even with just 6 months on, had a problem with it. And, but the job continued it. And we could have seen firsthand ourselves how the communities were reacting to it when it was happening, right? So with that said, I think we're getting a lot more competent, disciplined sheriff's department, right? But again, me being cynical, I think Edwin was put there because I think Abbasi is about to go into the PC's office, and Abbasi was from that era of numbers. Okay, and Abbasi was a numbers guy. So I'm cynical that Mamdani's getting a lot of pressure from the left. He's getting pressure in regards to not disbanding SRG, in regards to there was a report 2 weeks ago about CRT's stops, which were declared legal, Then he's gotten pushback for the recent eviction where Chi Yosei was arrested. He's getting pushback from the left from the NYPD overtime, which is about to shoot up the roof for all this summer's activities. And he's getting pushback from certainly blocking the World Cup outdoor parties. So I think Mamdani's getting a lot of pushback from the left, his base, and he's offering them a cookie. Okay, not to say that Edwin is not competent. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that he's about to put in the exact opposite of Edwin in terms of the numbers and the 250 era into the police department. And this is going to be his distraction while that happens and his way of appeasing the left. But again, I think Edwin is competent, and I wish him the best of luck in that position because he's going to need a lot of luck and a lot of patience, especially since we are at a time frame where the city is looking to pick our pockets left and right with all sorts of fees and all sorts of programs that the sheriff's office is going to be the spearhead of including the Super Speeders Act. And for our civilians watching, keep in mind the sheriff's office in New York City is a little different from your traditional sheriff's office. Okay, the NYPD handles much of the sheriff functions that you're commonly aware of. Our sheriff's department, our sheriff is appointed, he's not elected, and the sheriff's department is kind of like a boutique law enforcement uh, uh, agency that handles much of the enforcement of the Department of Finance. And some of those include executing evictions and asset seizures, and also serving family court mandates and civil arrest warrants. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling on it.
Listen, I speak from a place from the heart, and I can tell you this: I don't want any job in New York City. I'm not saying great job to Edwin because I'm looking for a job or two to connect with Edwin. I don't want any job in New York City. I'm traveling by RV. That's exactly what I want to do. I want to travel. I want to do jujitsu. I want to do this network. I don't even want to be in New York City at full time anymore. So I don't want any of that. But I will say this: I grew an affinity for Edwin. I'll tell you why. Initially, when Edwin was speaking out, I questioned his motives. I said, "Well, what's really going on here?" But after watching him and then having several conversations with him, and then him, of course, he was on this podcast several years ago. It was about 2.5, almost 3 years ago, that Edwin was on this network when when his book was about to come out, and we had a great conversation. And I would say I disagree with most positions and stances he has on policing, but I believed that his position came from a place of truth, and I believe that he was credible in his position. And there were some things that I agreed, or some things I didn't agree, but I could see that lens and I could understand his perspective. And he definitely put some steam behind it, right? He definitely didn't say it as just a buzzword, but when he did make statements, he gave a position behind it and a reason for it. And while we might not totally agree on the truth of police work, but I think ultimately we want the same outcome. So Edwin, I want to give you a shout out, brother, and say congratulations. I'm happy for you because you are credible, you are intelligent, and you surely are prepared and ready for this job. Now, with that being said, this is the Finest Unfiltered. Now, if Edwin does something that we feel does not align and is not good for New York City, we're going to say it. We're not going to hold back. Just as we had conversations with Edwin, we never held back. We had a great conversation. It was myself and John and Edwin when his book was coming out. We had a great conversation. There was a lot of stuff we disagreed on, but it was a gentleman, adult conversation where I often talk about opposition meets opportunity. So while he might be opposition in a lot of thoughts, it met a lot of opportunity. So Edwin, great job, brother. I'm confident that you can handle this job. I hope that politics, especially in this position, especially on the Zohran Mamdani, doesn't swing your authenticity. So we'll be paying attention. And of course, if something happens with Edwin Raymond and we don't agree with it, you'll see a meme. We're not shy. We're not going to hold back. This is not the finest filtered. This is the finest unfiltered. And Edwin knows it. Edwin knows it. So, but there's nothing wrong for saying, hey, right now, I do think he's the man for the job. And talk about qualifications. It's sad where New York City cops undermine their own qualifications. He was a lieutenant in the police department. A lieutenant in the New York City Police Department, in many cases as a platoon commander, you could easily be commanding 50 to 75 or even upwards of 100 people, depending on the size of the command or the detail that you're in. That's a lot of personnel diversity and responsibility, especially in the police department. And one thing I tell you, what's interesting about lieutenant, people often say that the rank of lieutenant in the police department is easy, right? Because if something is so big, you push it up to the captain, and if something's kind of minuscule, you push it down to the sergeant. But also as a lieutenant, it's actually difficult, and you learn the art of managing up and managing down. So as a lieutenant, you learn how to manage the people above you, while also managing the people below you. So those are definitely qualifications. So Edmund, want to congratulate you, wish you luck, and at the same time, we will hold your feet to the fire and hold you accountable and hold you responsible. And I think Edward would agree with what we're saying and wouldn't expect anything less from us. So yeah, that should be the adult conversation. You're in a position of public politics and policing. You should be held accountable, no matter what.
Pat Donahue brings up I want a logical explanation as to why the Edwin Raymond shit-canned the domestic violence complaint resulting in charges and a 20-day hit. So again, I mean, he came on here, he explained it. I think if you go back to that time, Ed Mullen said that wasn't the whole story, and I don't believe everything you hear. So I take his word. I take his word on it. Like, honestly, when he explained it to me, it kind of made sense as to what was going on, and it didn't lose sight on me that the job literally targets you the minute you speak out against it. And I know because it's happened to me. So that's why this podcast exists, so it is what it is. Like, like I said,
Come on, John, they wouldn't do that.
Like I said, I don't agree with everything, but I wish him luck. And I think, I think Marlon's theory really ties in, is like, and they're really putting Edwin there as meat for his base, that he's a reformer, that he's a police reformer, and then yet he's going to bring in another hard charger into the police department. For those of you that haven't read Edwin's Raymond book, I suggest you read it. It's an inconvenient cop. My Fight to Change Policing in America, I believe. I read it. I listened to it on Audible as well. I thought it was a great book. Edwin narrates the whole book. And I think I got to see the world and the way he viewed those scenarios through his eyes. And I've been on a lot of podcasts where people have pushed back at the things I've been saying about broken windows, including Edwin, where I've done other podcasts with him, and everyone uses his point of view that I have to align with it. And I always said, look, I don't agree with Edwin's point of view, but I respect and I believe that he believes that's his opinion, and that's fine. I look at the world through a different lens. He didn't grow up as an Italian kid in Bensonhurst and watch the other side of the Yusef Hawkins incident and deal with the police on the other aspect of it. So I think his view is important. I think he'll do a much better job than whatever that idiot's name was, Horsehead Miranda. But I think it like what Marlon touched on, I think really ties into the hypocrisy of Zohran Mamdani. And I think, everything he said on the campaign trail, and I think right now we should take a moment to give Zohran Mamdani a kudos, because there is one thing that he campaigned on that he's finally going to accomplish and actually hold true to. And that was that he will not march in the Israeli Day Parade. So that is the first thing in his administration that actually coincides with what he said that he was going to do. So as disgraceful as it is, I'll give him a kudos, because to me, you're not really bowing down to the state of Israel at this point. You're supporting Jewish New Yorkers. The same way the Columbus Day Parade isn't paying reverence to Christopher Columbus. It's supporting Italian New Yorkers, Italian American New Yorkers. So, I mean, I think it's disgraceful for a mayor to not march in any of those parades. But at least he's holding true to his one campaign promise, because when you look at the Israeli Day Parade, it flies, and how the police are policing this, it flies in the face of everything he said on the campaign trail and everything that he said upon entering office. Now, I've played on here numerous times, and I talk about it probably ad nauseum on social media to most people, that he is opening us up for a large-scale terrorist attack, and he's doing so because he wants to decouple, and he said it out of his own mouth numerous times, he wants to decouple the department's counterterrorism resources from First Amendment activities, right? He wants to disband the SRG because he believes they're a counterterrorism unit, even though they really aren't, right? They're just riot police is really what they are. And so I've been talking about how that weakens our stance in counterterrorism, and how that's a complete reversal from our post-September 11, 2001 posture when it comes to that. And now here's the Israeli Day Parade. Stakes are really high, right? Threat environment is high as it ever been. It's not is it any more or any less? I don't think so. You know, I think New York City remains the number one terrorist target in the world. That's a fact. It will stay that way. So this is how I believe every First Amendment activity, regardless if it's a parade or if it's a protest or whatever it is, but the Israeli Day Parade is in fact a First Amendment activity. And listen to what Jessica Tisch says here about how they're going to police it. And you can't not hear it. You know, it's a First Amendment activity. He said he's going to decouple the department's counterterrorism strategies from First Amendment activity, but yet he's not doing it. So another campaign promise he didn't hold true to. Listen to what she says here.
That threat environment, to be blunt, we are not messing around with security at this year's parade. The NYPD has one of the most robust municipal counterterrorism capabilities of any city in the world, and I am bringing all of that to bear for this year's parade. This Sunday, New Yorkers will see the most extensive security plan that the NYPD has ever put together for the Salute to Israel parade, including the largest number of officers ever assigned to that detail. Included in that security plan will be the most heavy weapons teams ever, robust camera coverage of the area, and comprehensive screening of everyone entering the parade route, including spectators, vendors, participants, and the press. If you think you are too important to be screened, don't come. There will be no exceptions. In addition to screening people, we will be screening and sweeping all assets deployed on the route, including vehicles and porta potties. Relatedly, we will not tolerate any disruptions to the parade. Any unauthorized persons entering the parade route will be arrested. The public should also expect to see counterterrorism teams, explosive detection canines, helicopters, drones, emergency service, mounted unit, hostile surveillance teams, and other assets. And as we've witnessed, there has been an increase in vehicle ramming attacks across the United States, Canada, and Europe. With that in mind, streets leading to the route will be fortified with hardened block NYPD vehicles and heavy sanitation trucks. There will also be assets that you don't see, including plainclothes officers in the area. Intelligence teams will be monitoring social media.
So what do you think, Marlon? Like it's the same thing here. Like he's selling to his crowd. Oh, I'm changing policing forever. I'm getting rid of the SRG. I'm doing all of this, and then hey, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna deploy the SRG and we're gonna deploy counterterrorism resources to the First Amendment activity.
That's funny because I stumbled upon an article last night that was from a communist website, and they were criticizing Mamdani too, and they were calling out that he's basically not the communist they expected when they voted for him, which we kind of told them that too. We kind of told his base when they were, during the election cycle, that he's not really a communist, okay? And you're not gonna get all that free stuff that he promised you still ain't happening. Okay, where's the free buses? But yeah, at the same time, I can sense his uncomfortableness in that press conference, probably because he knows he's gonna get that blowback from his base, and I also think this, going back to Edwin Raymond, this is why I thought Edwin getting put in that position is also a olive branch to his base, because look, Tish is, per her own words, we don't know how it's actually going to happen when when the boots get assigned to the ground, but per her own words, she's basically pulling out a full package for the Israel parade, right? And all that full package, no doubt, angers his base, because they don't want any sort of a real police presence. They want community affairs just to be the only police presence at any sort of gathering, So that doesn't exactly make his base happy. I also thought, listening to that Tish, you can tell she watches this, because I mentioned a couple times last episode about vehicle ramming and how dumb it was that they kept talking of drones as though that is the single biggest threat that we have the single biggest threat you have is that a terrorist is going to use a low effort or low skilled means of creating a mass casualty incident, and that is they just go get a car and they will drive into a crowd. They're not gonna get a drone and learn to fly a drone and have the drone connected to telemetry data that could possibly trace them, so I thought it was curious that she mentioned that in that podcast, in that press conference.
I find it vile and disgusting that Zohran Mamdani doesn't want to attend the Israeli Day Parade. Now, first of all, there's 7.5 to 8.5 million people in New York City at any given time, and approximately 1.5 million New Yorkers are Jewish, and there's only about 7.5 to 8 million Jews in Israel. That I think the Israeli Jewish population is about 7.5 million to 8 million people. The entire Jewish population, and New York City has about 1.5 million Jewish people. Oh, now, a lot of people you would tell me growing up, like, I would say, people like, so what are you? I would always say, well, I'm Jewish. Like, oh, no, that's a religion. And I understand what you're saying. But Jewish people don't see it that way. Jewish people see it, it's an identity as part of a historical culture that goes back many years, part of a historical community. And most of it emanates from Israel. And him not supporting or going to Israel Day Parade is, while it might not be politically convenient for him, he's supposed to attend and show support to Israeli or just Jewish New Yorkers, especially in a time of anti-Semitism, especially in this time. You shouldn't be taking any sides. You're supposed to be apolitical also when it comes to identities, cultures, and religions. And you should say, I support everyone in the city, whether Israeli Jewish or they're Palestinian. They're Americans. They're New Yorkers. And so them celebrating Israel is not only just supporting, they're not supporting necessarily a government, but they're supporting the pride and the heritage that comes from Jewish people. And as I said before, the U.S. population as a whole, the U.S. population as a whole is about 8 million Jews, which is a small amount. If you think about it, a country of 324 million people, it's a small amount. And 1.5 million of those Jews reside in New York City, not just New York State. So I think this is absolutely vile and disgusting by Zohran Mamdani. And going back to what Jessica Tisch had said, is something that I said earlier in this episode. She said it's a threat environment. I think the threat environment is the NYPD leadership staying in the posture that they have stayed in, that all of a sudden they're going to have more security at this event than other ones. That which shows it's a complete failure. Why would you need more at this event than others? There's always a threat, especially all New Yorkers should be protected. And we've been telling you that for quite some time. So sure as hell, she's damn paying attention. I've been told by numerous good sources, incredible sources, that Jessica Tisch watches this network and especially this podcast every time it's live. So Jessica Tisch, thank you for being a fan.
And that includes Jessica Tisch herself. So, it's laughable.
Drum roll.
Regardless who watches this, we don't care. I mean, it doesn't matter. Watch it, don't watch it. It's the damn truth. I mean, some people don't like to listen to it, and it gets real. That's why I've been getting a lot. Like, the threat environment for me has increased significantly recently. And I've been getting a lot because once you start really poking on the truth and you're over the target, they just start hammering you. But I think, I think the other thing is and I agree with you totally. I think it's completely disgraceful to not show up at any of these parades. And I think New Yorkers should be demanding, every New Yorker, is there a list of parades that you will not be attending, Mr. Mayor? You know what I mean? And honestly, I look at Tisch, everyone's giving her kudos because she said, I will be proudly attending, after he said that he will not. She said the mayor made his decision, he gave his answer, but I will be proudly attending, as if she that's the signal. And I'm like, I don't think that's the signal. You know what I mean? I think if you were really righteous in your position, you wouldn't even work for him. Be like, I can't work for this guy. I can't go out there and do this job and pretend like we're providing public safety for a guy who thinks that we need to decouple the NYPD's counterterrorism resources from First Amendment activities. Because look, the thing is this, there is this conflict overseas. And there is a lot of it's playing out on the streets in New York as well as it's playing over in Gaza at night in and night out. And the potential for a violent act is really going to be there on Sunday. And so now you're seeing the NYPD significantly change their posture. That was changed by Eric Adams and Ed Caban, where they said they weren't going to staff riot police. They weren't going to put these counterterrorism units out there. They weren't going to put these heavy weapons out there. They were going to put more of a dialogue style unit police out there, and they were going to have community affairs out there in light blue shirts handing out lollipops. And that is not the posture we could have. It's not a competent posture, and it opens up that threat environment to every single New Yorker, and it makes the job of the NYPD much harder to contain when you have to control a crowd or there are periods of civil unrest during either that parade or that protest. And so what the NYPD's been doing is they've been hiding SRG like blocks away. Like, look, guys, we need you, but just when it gets real crazy, we're going to call you in, right? So one reporter, I'll give kudos to him. I don't know who it was. I couldn't hear it. One reporter actually asks her about SRG, and he asks her, are there any significant changes made to the SRG since you sent your police department to Ohio to study the dialogue unit that handled 30 protests in Columbus, Ohio last year, when we've handled over 4,500 at the same time last year? And what she did was she answered his first question, and they abruptly ended the press conference, and she walked off the stage. And the reason she did that is because I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to see something significantly different on Sunday. SRG is not going to be hiding around the block. They are going to be deployed in mass with heavy weapons, fully equipped, ready to go on Sunday. And it's going to be a stark contrast from her own rhetoric following that IED attack when she said, look, it happened at a protest, but it didn't necessarily have to happen at a protest, you know? And I'm telling you this, Tish, it might not have happened at a parade, but it might happen at a parade. So are you going to play that gamble? Are you going to take the same gamble you're taking with protests? And if so, why? How has that threat environment changed? If anything, I would think the protest posture should be much harsher, because that's more of a threat environment. There's more hostility on those events. So, and it's just, depending on the protest, it may well be as just a mass gathering amount of people. And like I've been saying for months now, a mass gathering is a soft target. Here's Jessica Tish. Listen to her, watch her walk off the stage and not answer the question. And she does so to protect herself and really to protect Mamdani from you seeing how ridiculous all of his campaign rhetoric is, all of his continued rhetoric is, and how it really doesn't align with reality. And he's basically full of shit. The only campaign promise that he gave you so far is he will not attend the Israeli Day Parade. That's it.
In regards to protesters, are they allowed to get close to the route at all? What will be dealt with them if they do show up? And has the role of SRG been modified or changed at all since the trip to Ohio?
I'll start with the answer to the first question. Anyone who is screened is allowed through the checkpoints, but as I mentioned in my remarks, we will not tolerate any disruptions to the parade. Anyone who enters the parade route unauthorized will be arrested.
And you see him smiling? You see him smiling because the reason he's smiling is he knows what she did. She didn't answer the question. Ridiculous. And as reporters and as people out there, civilians, you should all be asking, why now? Why isn't this what we're doing all the time? You know, disgusting.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I didn't see that full press conference, but I got to go back. I saw that comment about us, no one watching us, and I just got to disagree with that, you know, because they watch us because we're months ahead of the curve, you know, and not to toot our own horns, but a lot of the things we say here, you know, months or a year or so afterwards, they happen. So for that. We're just gonna have to bring out the John Stradamus meme every time. Now and every time we make a prediction, I'm gonna
Why do
bring
I
out
have
the
a
John
green velour,
Stradamus
bro?
meme.
I couldn't get a red velour.
Don't look at me. The AI did that. You know. In fact, I don't know. You look
Pat
more like
Donahue
Pitbull
send me that
overhead
one?
than John.
John, John, this guy's a little better looking.
He is.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
it's
better looking.
Pitbull.
He still has the same angry face though, right? Yeah.
I like the collar on the velour, man. A little Danny Terrio look.
Is
Yeah.
that a Sergio Tacchini, or is that what do you think that is? Fucking guy.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Good shit,
Yeah,
Marlon.
With that said, right? So Detective Nolan, I'm gonna have to make a prediction here, right? Edward Raymond, I don't think he's gonna be there long either. I think I think the situation is gonna put him, it's gonna put him in a situation of weighing his morals versus what they want him to do, and I don't think he's gonna be there long. So had to bring out my John Stradamus meme for that one.
I agree. Listen, that's why I'm saying that's why I have an affinity for Raymond. Everything I know about Edwin so far in the conversation that we had, we all talk about, people bending their integrity, their moral principles. I don't see Edwin doing that. I don't see Edwin bending his moral integrity or bending his principles, and he may be put in that position. So, from what I know from Edwin so far, and I don't know him that well, but like I said, we grew a relationship here through the network. I don't see him doing that. If he does do it, you damn right I'm gonna call him out on it. You damn right I'm gonna say, Edward, remember who you were? We're gonna call him out. We'll put memes out there. We'll talk about it. No doubt about it. But I don't see that happening. I do think I do think that this is not gonna have longevity. I do think this will be short term. So I have to see how things kind of play out and how they start to make a better assessment. So Nolan, I'm gonna give you I'm gonna give you a spot on. So Marlon, you're gonna have to put that up also. Ron created the EPD award for the Spot On Award. When someone's spot on, we're going to have to put up the Spot On Award. So, Nolan, spot on for you, brother. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. I think so, too. And you know why I think that, too, is if you look at all the deed theft that's occurring in Black communities, and the sheriff deals directly with that. And Edwin is a real advocate for the Black community. He is, and it's not because he's a grifter. It's because he cares. You know what I mean? And so, I would find it hard pressed to believe that he would evict someone that he didn't believe deserved to be evicted. And we'll see how that plays out. And honestly, if I had to pick someone to be the sheriff that I know will be impartial to those deed theft cases, it would be Edwin. So that's the whole thing there. And I see a lot of people downplaying the rank of lieutenant. You might as well downplay being a cop whatsoever, because I think the overwhelming majority of cops, whether you're a boss, whatever you do, you're in law enforcement, you can't even explain what you do. You learn all these skills, you have all these skills that you apply daily. And you couldn't sit down in a job interview and tell anyone how that could apply in any aspect of life. I laugh my ass off because people are like, what am I going to do after this job? And I'm like, you can do whatever you want, bro. Whatever you want. One of my good friends, he's like, he loves sports cards. So he started like this sports card trading thing, and he blew up, bro. He's on the front cover of the Staten Island Advance the other day. He gets like 100 tables. He has these events monthly. He's making money every day trading cards. And he's like, bro, I can't believe it. And I was like, yeah, I told you. I said, if you build it, they will come. Same shit. When I started the podcast, dude, everybody, you gotta see the shit that I was getting. You out of your mind, no one's gonna listen to you. I was like, I don't care. I like to do it. So if nobody wants to listen, I'll do it. And look at us now. 1.6 million, 1.7 million views this month on YouTube. 4 million views on Instagram. 7 million views on X. I mean, we're getting millions and millions of views each month on this platform. Hit over 200 and something thousand subscribers. And, if you build it, people will come. And it doesn't matter what you want to do. You want to sell insurance? You have the skills to do it as a police officer. You want to sell cars? You have the skills to do it as a police officer. You want to sell real estate? You could do it. You want to be an engineer after it? You could do it. You want to be a lawyer? You could do it. You want to be a doctor? It's a lot of school, but you could do it. You know, and I'm not talking about those criminal justice doctors that are, you know, starting there and with the criminal justice. I'm a PhD doctor in criminal justice. I'm not talking about those guys starting their unfiltered podcast. I'm talking about real medical doctors, people that actually benefit society, not playing theory. You know, whatever you want to do in this world, you could do it. The only thing stopping you is you. As long as you're on this earth, you have the ability to do whatever the hell you want. So if you're gonna sell yourself short because you're a cop, that tells me a lot about you and your own limitations, and you're trying to place that on yourself. I personally think being an NYPD police officer is a respected profession, or any, you know, George too, state trooper, but being in law enforcement in this country is a respected profession, and you develop a lot of skills that can translate into any industry in this country or outside of this country as well.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I speak to a lot of guys that are headed for retirement, or they just hit retirement, and it's always like, what am I going to do? Or some guys that are just completely miserable and they're on the job and like, well, I got 3 kids, and like, what else am I going to do? And I always say, what do you mean you're going to do? Like, one thing I could say, like, when I was in the Marine Corps, the guy, like, a lot of the Marines I speak to, obviously there's a lot of Marines that go into, you know, become firefighters and cops and that type of government work. But a lot of Marines I served with, they become entrepreneurs because of all the skills they learned in the Marine Corps. And I think the same is for policing. I often speak to guys that are retired or about to retire, or they're on the fence. Like, it's like, well, what am I going to do? I'm like, am I going to do security? I'm like, you have so much skills to be. I think cops should be becoming entrepreneurs. I mean, if you're a cop and you're in, just think you're Sector Atom in any precinct in New York City, you and your partner are pretty much like running your own business. You guys are operating a zone, a sector, or whatever area you call about. You're responsible for that area. It's almost like you're managing a store. You manage the people that go inside that store. You have to make sure it's secure. You have to check the inventory, right? You're responsible for a lot. So I think a lot of cops sell themselves short. And I would always recommend to cops, start your own business. That's the same thing when we did when we started this podcast, right? Start your own thing. You know, I've also started small businesses myself. And so there's a lot you could do. Like, there's so much skills you have to be your own entrepreneur. So much skills you learn to be your own operating CEO. All those skills. I really do believe that. If you're a community officer that's working a beat in an area, you know, even when you walk in a foot post, that's like, I used to say, like, this is my area today. Like, nothing's going to happen here. Same thing, just, you know, when you have a business, you operating and managing. It's a lot of skills that you earn that I think are transposed to be an entrepreneur. So a lot of cops, if you're on the fence, like, man, I'm about to retire, or I just retired, what am I going to do? Be an entrepreneur. That's my advice.
I just one more thing on that, Mom, before you go. Like, I started a transportation company before my pension kicked in, and 2 years in a row, 0 advertising dollars, 0 presence on social media, and it was rated the #1 transportation company in St. Johns County 2 years in a row. And, you know, all the cops kept asking me, like, would you know about transportation before this? And I was like, well, I was trained. I was driver. I got qualified to RMP training in the academy. That's about it. I didn't know anything about it. I looked it up. I said, how do I get these licenses? What do I got to do? All right. I start the business. You throw it out there and it'll work. You know, you build it, they'll come. You know, if you put the time into it and you're willing to fight through the lows and fight through the negativity, it'll be successful, whatever you do, you know? And so I hear you. Is it Samantha Guccione? She says you have executives that can't articulate their own stat speeches. I get it, but I don't compare myself to those people. You know what I mean? And either should you. Just because there are plenty of idiots in every profession. I mean, I know I've talked to attorneys almost every day. I talk to politicians every day. They're morons, you know, and it's, you know, like, I'm like Eric Adams could be the mayor in New York City. I could rule the universe. I could be ruler of the entire universe. You know what I mean? And just, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I don't compare myself to them. You know, I get what you're saying. Yeah, but that's true of every profession. There are people in those professions that aren't competent, that aren't conscientious, that don't care about it. They're just there collecting a check. But I don't believe that to be true of most people. I don't.
Yeah. I you know, John is right about selling Lieutenant short. What about the PC who has no policing experience at all? She's never had to wear any sort of uniform, and now she's the PC. So a lot of lieutenants, in my opinion, we have too many ranks on this job, right? Way too many ranks, and a lot of functions of a captain could really be done by a lieutenant, especially now that when captains themselves don't really have how much power do they really have to even command their own commands, So I think we are selling that role short, and like John and Eric said, selling what cops can do, and what that rank doesn't bring brains and leadership. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Also, I'm now in charge of this show's medal committee, so I shall be giving out the spot ons, from now on. So a spot.
No one's got the first one.
Whoever in that chat saw posted John Stradamus, you get a spot on too, because
that was hilarious. That was I think that was Danny Reagan.
Danny Reagan, yeah, spot on, Danny.
John Stradamus, that's hilarious.
What else? Yeah. So that's all.
Did you guys see what Nolan put out about me yesterday? I was crying. He put a picture of me and Stephen Lee.
Oh, that was hilarious.
A plate of fried rice.
You guys are hugging, right? That one?
It was like, the friends, will you be my best friend? I almost spit my coffee out. I was crying. I was crying.
Oh, you got to be. Nolan's stuff is hilarious.
That was one you guys. I'm on the hit list though, bro. Nolan, take me off the hit list, bro. Come on.
Better watch out, man.
Making memes of you all day now.
Take me off the hit list, bro.
Yeah, man. Listen, honestly, that's the bottom line. Is cops sell themselves short, and I do believe that ranking up is not necessarily a level of intelligence, but it's a level of resources and things that you learn. And being a leader is not necessarily a level of intelligence. It's the ability to have compassion for people, to know how to be influential to people. That's what good leaders do, right? You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room, right? If I'm a good leader and I have, let's say I'm doing there's a big assignment. If I want to pick the smartest guy in the room, I pick Marlon. If I want to pick the shortest guy in the room, I pick John. So I have to. That's what you do when you're a good leader. You use your resources, right? Like I had two monsters on my team. These guys were like, and they were track runners. Like, if we have to run after somebody, like I'm picking those two. That's what you got to do. You got to be a good leader. Know the resources. Know your people that are around you. That's what good leaders do. Not necessarily a bad leader is the one that says, "Well, I'm the smartest guy in the room because I'm the chief." Well, I'm the best guy in the room because no. You might be the best looking guy because as you get promoted, you get better looking. But the reality is, you use the resources in and around you. That's what good leaders do, is they know where to put the pieces, right? Like Tetris, I put this piece here. That's what good leaders do, and that's why I really believe that all cops, you have from all ranks, you have the ability to be an entrepreneur. You are an entrepreneur. You're running a sector. You and your partner, you're at sector admin in a 4-4. You guys are running a whole store. You're managing that store. You're managing people. You're leading. You're moving things around. Like, it's sad to say, John, that you say that, and that's the reality. It's sad, and that's true. Like, guys, like, they can't explain what they did or what they do as a cop, and you do so many things in one day. If you think about what you do, you marry people, you divorce them. At domestics, you're handling car accidents. You're analyzing crime in your precinct. You're managing the people. You are a manager. You're a cop. You're managing the people that live there. To keep peace. You go to a job and there's two people arguing, you're managing it. You're holding divorce court right there. So you are an entrepreneur. There's no doubt about it. Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah. If you can't explain yourself, dude, like you can't explain who you are, who the hell's, if you're not going to be your own advocate, who's going to be the advocate for you? Because basically everyone's going to shit on you and downplay everything you do your entire life. So like everybody, even people that don't want to do it, it's just a natural human thing. So like you have to be your own advocate. I had to go to an event yesterday. I go to the event and everybody's like, "You're so young. Why you retired from the NYPD? Like what are you doing here?" And I'm like, and I know, like, at one point, I probably would have shied away from really getting into it with people. But now I'm just like, oh, yeah. No, New York City forced me out because I refused to comply with the vaccine mandate. And now, now I'm on social media. I'm an advocate for police officers and for common sense legislation, and people are like, oh, wow, tell me about that, and I know that there's people that offends because they were maybe pro-vax or not. And I'm like, I don't care. It's just who I am. Why am I going to shy away from that fact? And the same thing for all you guys and girls. You want to apply to units and you don't because you're afraid. Shame on you.
It's true. It's true.
Hey, Jack 14%
Did John
says,
freeze?
I froze?
He did.
Ooh,
Oh, yeah, he did for a second.
Am I back?
I thought
Yeah,
it was
you're back
John who
now.
froze.
Yeah.
Jack 14% says, good leaders have MBAs. What are you talking about? That's why I know this is Jack. Absolutely.
He works on Wall Street, according to him.
Is Wall Street living off your grandfather's trust? Is that Wall Street?
Is that Fort Lauderdale?
Oh, that's weird.
I thought Wall Street was going
I'm
to
gonna
Dallas.
go, you know what? I'm gonna start going down to South Florida making videos by a certain P. I think,
Okay.
make videos. Yeah, an exclusive, a John McCarry exclusive. How you doing?
Let's go to Pompano Beach.
Yeah, how you doing? The first to put out. It's an exclusive. I want my credit. Pat me on the back. I'm like, like running out on social media to post info that everyone already knows for weeks, hours, or months, and then you get it and you rush out. That doesn't mean that you're actually a service or an exclusive news station or anything else like that. It's like, all right, what about that? What do you think about that now? Right? And then that's where it falls short. Okay, give us your analysis on that thing that you just put out. Oh, no. I got to get fed that. Hold on. Yeah, is this my attorney? Yeah, what do you want me to say? Oh, okay. Hysterical, bro. One other thing we didn't talk about today. We're going on 2 hours, 30 minutes is Chief Gurley. So I think we should give our opinion on it. I know Ron and Rob covered it. I got to be honest. I got my in-laws in here. I haven't had time to really listen or read or do anything other than work out and then prepare for this. So what are you guys' thoughts on Chief Gurley? He was modified. He was already removed from his assignment as one of the Bronx Borough commanders. Now that the Bronx is split in two, there was an off-duty incident involving Chief Gurley where there was a male stalking his daughter, literally, like posting crazy things about her on the internet. One of the photos on the internet was his daughter with a halo over her head saying, "I'm going to choke you out." So the daughter is visibly shooken. She was not an acquaintance of this individual other than that they went to school together at one time. So they were not romantically involved, as like some of the news outlets said. And so there's a lot of stuff out there that Gurley confronted him out in public, that there's a video out there about what happened during that time. There was a shot fired out of Gurley's gun, which Haverstraw Police Department said was an accidental discharge. And there's just a lot of talk about this. And so I mean, I think it's something we definitely got to talk about a little bit here.
So this is what I want to say right here. I'm a man and I have daughters. I have a wife, I have a mother, I have a sister. You're damn right. I'm going to protect my women at all given times, especially my daughters. Same thing goes for you, John. Same thing goes for you, Marlon. I have no issue. I don't care if you're a cop. You're not supposed to get involved. Someone messes you with your daughter or your wife, you better step in. Absolutely. Now, should cops take matters into their own hands? No. But this is what I'll say. If someone messes with my daughter, you're damn right I'm taking matters into my own hands. And I know that I'm going to get suspended, and I don't care. That's where I struggle with. If I was a cop and I took matters into my own hands to protect my daughter, I know damn well they're going to suspend me. They could say, don't do it. We're going to suspend you. I'm saying, yeah, I don't care. I'm going to protect my daughter, but I'm going to get suspended. To me, he had a pretty soft landing. I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all. Gurley, shout out to you, brother. You protect your daughter, I would do the same. Absolutely. I would do the same. There's no one who's going to step on my wife's toes or harass my daughter. You don't have to come find my daughter. I'm going to find you. I don't care if I'm a cop. I know I'll probably call him like, listen, you're going to suspend me. Here's where I'm going to be. I'm going to take care of business. The other thing I struggle with is you're going to go there, be a man, unless he takes his gun out or a knife out, beat his ass. I have no problem with it. Beat his ass, take care of business, protect your daughter. But why are you taking your gun out? You know, I got attacked by two guys. Tried to rob me off duty. I didn't have my gun on me. They pulled a knife on me. Fortunately, I beat their asses. I was lucky, and I was actually really lucky because having a knife confronted while it was happening, I wasn't nervous. But afterwards, watching the video, I'm like, man, this is pretty scary because a knife is dangerous. And I didn't have my gun on me. If I had my gun on me, things might have been different, right? They pulled a knife. But when this guy, from what I heard so far, there hasn't been any reports about a gun or a knife involved. Why are you taking out your gun? That's what I struggle with. Why are you taking out your gun? I have no problems. Protect your daughter. John, I know you and I spoke about this differently. Protect your daughter. But why are you taking out your gun? I have no problem. You take care of business. It's your family. But I do think he had a soft landing. If it was me, John, Marlon, if we stood up and protected our daughters, you sure as hell know we would be suspended. And with this matrix right now, we'd probably be being close to termination. So I think he got a pretty soft landing. That's my honest opinion. I agree. I understand it. I get it. But there's some things I struggle with there.
Yeah, I've talked about it before that ever since I had the active shooter training, I look at corners differently. And if I'm going after somebody and I lose them for a second around a corner, or I'm likely I'm going to pull out my firearm as I cut the pie, right? So I'm saying that because I think there are times when you may have to pull out your firearm due to the potential threat, right? But I think in a case like this, I think if somebody's threatening a family member, by all means, if the threat is imminent, you do what you got to do, right? But I think that if the threat isn't imminent, you do have to pick up the phone and call 911, because not only are you at a tactical disadvantage because you may not have the tools on you, you may not even have your firearm on you, but or be in that tactical mindset. But I think if the threat, there's a lot we're missing from this. If the threat was imminent, if he happened to encounter him at the grocery and this guy was coming at him, then I think it changes the situation. However, if they got into an argument and a fight and then he starts pulling out his firearm, I think that's completely different, because like Eric says, if you're a regular cop, you get jammed up for that, So I think there's a lot missing here. But I tend to think the stuff they are hiding from us would probably look at this negatively, hence why he was actually modified after, he was modified, in fact, like a day or two after the actual incident. So that's another thing to think about, but yeah, that's just my thinking on this. I think there's a lot missing. And if that's you guys out there, and your family members are being threatened, and the threat isn't imminent, then I think you should, pick up the phone, call 911, and don't put yourself in a situation where, you don't necessarily have to.
So there's a lot here. One, I'm not looking at Gurley as a chief. Will he get special treatment from the job because he's a 2-star chief? Absolutely he will. 100%. Will that play into how the department responds to him? Absolutely. If it was a regular cop, this would be treated much differently. So I'll say that right off the bat. But I'm looking at it as a father and as a man. Mm-hmm. According to them, they've called the Haverstraw police numerous times on this individual. I've seen videos that this individual posted about his daughter, and it appears, in my opinion, to be like almost a demonic possession. And Haverstraw police refused to. I've since went on his Instagram page to pull those videos again, and he had taken them down, so I wasn't able to capture them. However, what I witnessed, I'm not even kidding, I started praying like immediately after watching it because I was like, holy shit, was he just speaking Latin? What the hell was that? This is not really, really scary shit. And what the family was told was that there wasn't enough there for the order of protection, meaning he has to do something first, right? And so one, you're a father, right? And I think the only mistake as a father that Gurley made was that any confrontation he had in this individual was done where there was a camera and anybody could recall ever what happened again, or it could be spoken about ever again, and where he has to put himself in a position where he ever has to bring it up again, right? I personally believe if this was the 80s or 90s, that kid should be a missing and the world would be better for it, and so that's my personal opinion because, having daughters, having people threaten my life and my kids often, I take very seriously. And here's the other thing. Just because I carry a gun and just because I'm a cop doesn't mean that I have to fist fight you ever, ever. In America, unlike New York, we all have the New York mindset. But in America, unlike New York, if somebody in Florida comes up to me and just starts throwing haymakers at me and I take out and I pump one in his chest, guess what that's called? Self-defense, stand your ground. You know what's going to happen? My sheriff's going to come say, all right, good job. Thank you. You guys have a good day. Be safe. Here's your firearm back. And I'm going to go about my business. In New York, however, you're more than likely going to get prosecuted, go to jail, lose your guns and all that stuff. So that's one. I don't ever have to fight anybody. You know what I mean? There's not this machismo thing. I'm not 17 years old in high school where I got to bump anybody or fight with anybody whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, I don't even give a shit if I am in New York. If multiple of you come up to me with my family, you're going to have a problem. Like I said originally, I will make you famous. I guarantee you I will be on a grand jury and we will be on the front cover of the New York Post. I guarantee it, so, and because, life's short and I ain't going out like a punk. So you're not going to get me in front of my kids and you're not going to harm my family or my wife or anybody else. So, I mean, that's one. Self-defense applies in that scenario. The other thing is there's super context missing from this because what if the other thing, like, people are going to disagree with that. Why would you pull out a gun when you're not being confronted? Because I can, because it's self-defense. But people that disagree with that, I get it. But how about the scenario that, okay, you don't like that he pulled out his gun. How about the scenario that, from what I hear, and I don't know that this to be true, but this is what I'm hearing, is that Gurley's other daughter was in a store and seen this kid, freaked out, called Gurley and's like, Dad, come here, please. I'm afraid, because the kid is a complete psycho. Gurley flies there. When he gets there, he says to the kid, what are you doing? And the kid charges him. And as they start to fight, he reaches for Gurley's gun. Now the fight over the gun happens and the round goes. That's what's being alleged that I'm hearing from other sides. I'm not saying that that's the fact. I'm not saying that part's a fact. That will come out, I guess, in the future. But if that's the case, I mean, how could you fault him? There's your answer for the round getting loose. Now, would a regular cop get modified in that situation too? Yeah, absolutely. Would they get suspended? Yeah, probably. But I just think it shows again, like the really piss poor system that we have at our police being able to protect us. I mean, because that is a really scary situation where you have this kid going online basically saying he's going to kill your daughter and the police won't even give you an order of protection for it. So I really, honestly, anything that resulted as a result of that, I hope Gurley comes out on the good end of it, even if he made some bad decisions along the way. And that's not me being a fan of him as a chief or anything else, because I'm well spoken out about the Adams administration and this administration and anyone that aligns themselves with, I question. But just as a father, I pray it comes out on the good end for him, because I'm going to side with him.
No, listen, I side with him too, is that he's a father. That's what I'm saying. I'm putting the hierarchy as father over chief. And that's why I would say if I'm in that position, I know I'm going to get suspended. And I will say this, and that's why I think he had a soft landing. I had two guys approach me, two young guys in their 20s. Turns out one of them was wanted for a shooting. They were bad dudes, tried to rob me. I handed them their asses. I mean, but I got lucky. They tried to stab me. I got lucky. I was able to actually overcome them. And,
but if you had your gun and you did that, I would say you were an idiot.
No, if I didn't have my gun on me, right? If I had my gun, I would. That's a totally different scenario. And I think you make a great point, but that's a completely different scenario. In my scenario, I was cornered. I had no choice. I had to take action. And the job, I will say this. Shout out to you, Ron Layson, because Ron Layson actually showed up. And because of Ron, I was actually stayed on the same duty status. Nothing changed. But I was, by the job itself and by the leadership, aside from Ron, I was treated terrible. Honestly, they treated me like shit. And they made me feel out to be like I did something wrong. And I will say this, and I don't care. I didn't care. I did what I had to do to protect myself. And I don't think cops have a duty to retreat. That's the problem. I think you're like, oh, couldn't you have run away? Couldn't you have, like, are you kidding me? Let's say I did. 2 guys pull a knife on me and try to rob me and I run away. What's going to happen the next time they see me? What's going to happen the time after? And this is the problem. I don't think cops have a duty. Obviously, these are different scenarios, but I don't think cops should have a duty to retreat. And I think, unfortunately, they put cops in a very disadvantageous position that you have to retreat or cower away. And I even felt that happened to me on that day where I was approached, that I was kind of thinking like, okay, I knew the fight was coming. I could see all the movements. We all know those behavioral indicators. I could see a guy reach his pocket. I'm like, shit. I don't need this right now, right? I don't want anything to happen off duty. You don't want anything to happen off duty, especially now. I know the job has changed, but especially as a cop, you don't want anything off duty because you know how meticulous that they're going to scrutinize you. So I will say this: they treated me terrible, and that's why I say this is a soft landing. They treated me, made me feel like a perp. They didn't treat me good at all, and then trying to tell me, happened to be 2 black guys. I'm not racist. Someone called the police and said there was a white guy who beat up 2 black guys. And then it was like, oh, maybe you should just not go too far with this, with civilian complaint review board. I'm like, are you serious? The DA's office didn't treat me too good on it either. You're a cop. And these guys got a very soft landing eventually when they found him. So it's absolutely ridiculous. But, when we talk about Gurley, he's a father. And as I said before, I have daughters. I have a wife. We have to protect our daughters. I have no problem. The thing I do struggle with is, I know, John, you don't agree, is him taking out his gun. If the guy has a knife, he sees a knife or he feels one, or as Marlon, which he's given a different scenario, you're in a situation where someone may have a gun, you're cutting corners, you're slicing the pie. That's something completely different. And a lot of context is missing from here. But if based on what we know, if it was a tussle, and the guy tried to take his gun out, he took it out, so he doesn't get his gun from him, that's something completely different. All I know is based on the rumors that we have right now, I struggle with him if he just took his gun out. I don't agree with that part, John. I understand. You shouldn't have to fight, but if you're going to that situation to protect your daughter, you are going there to fight. Let's be honest. You're not going there to have a conversation. It's never going to turn into a conversation.
I don't agree. I don't agree at all. This is America, so now I can't confront people, dude. Now,
I didn't say you can't.
Yeah,
I didn't say you can't,
because if I go there, then I want violence.
Well,
that's what you just said.
Let's try to. Oh, no, that's not what I said. Let's try to connect here.
What you're saying?
No, that's not what I said. I said you. I didn't say you can't. That's not.
If you're going there, you're looking to fight.
Well, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me if you go to confront another man. Tell me how that's not going to turn into a fight. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Because I'm going to speak to you as an American and as a father, saying, "Hey, what is your problem? Why are you obsessed with my daughter? Leave her alone."
And but what I'm saying, so you prove my point. Going to that situation, is the likelihood, the probability of getting to a fight, is that not high? You already have someone that's insane, it's crazy, stalking your daughter. Do you think that's going to be a reasonable conversation?
This is a free country. I have someone coming at my daughter. I have every right to confront them and speak to them civilly. If they chose to act in a manner violently and tumultuously, I have every right to defend myself.
I didn't say you don't have the right.
John, hear me out. That is, if I show up there with my gun out, pointing at him, that's a different scenario. But more than likely, that's not what happened. You know what I mean? More than likely, that's absolutely not what happened.
You're right, but explain to me how, because this is the part we're not connected here. So to me, you're right. You have a right to confront someone. Absolutely. I'm telling you, I am going to confront them. But tell me, don't you believe that the likelihood it becomes violent and confrontational is there? You already have a psycho who's stalking your daughter. You think
you called the cops numerous times. They did nothing for you. Your daughters are scared. It's affecting your entire life. Yeah. I mean,
do you think the likelihood of violence is there?
High? Yeah, but that's not my problem. My problem isn't worrying about the likelihood. This is America. I could travel freely where I want, and I could say what I want. If you decide that you're going to physically attack me, I have every right to defend myself. You know, there was a case that just happened here in Florida, right? Guy's driving his car. They get into a beef back and forth, blah, 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 blah. The other driver cuts the guy off. Did the original driver confront him? Yeah, because he was like, fuck you, blah, 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 blah. They get back and forth. The other driver cuts him off, gets in front of him, comes over, and the guy's like, look, dude, just drive like it, just drive normal. The guy's sitting in his car like this. Did he confront him? Yeah, but it's sitting in his car. The other dude hauls off, punches him in his face. Guy pulls out his gun, boom, boom, justified.
John, there's a difference between being justified and understanding your actions. What I'm telling you is, and this is my point, I'm willing to confront someone who's threatening my daughter, but I know the likelihood, tensions are high, likelihood that's not going to be a reasonable conversation where we walk away shaking hands. That's the ultimate goal. I would love that. The ultimate goal is that we walk away, calm heads prevail. But I also know I'm putting myself in a position where the likelihood is that it's going to be confrontational. That's what I'm saying. I have no issues with Gurley doing that. What I'm saying, though, is you bringing the gun with you, that already heightens the situation. You already put yourself in a position that you're prepared and ready to go.
Dude, I carry a gun. My daughter calls me, come here, I'm scared. I have a gun on me.
No, I'm not saying you shouldn't
I
carry.
carry a gun. I'm a licensed gun owner. Like, you know what I mean? It's a conscious decision when you're a licensed gun owner. Like, I believe in carrying your firearm. I believe in defending your family.
Let's say you're on, rhetorically speaking, let's say you're online in a supermarket. Guy bumps into you. And you're like, hey, buddy, I'm sorry. And he goes, yeah, buddy. And he flexes. He goes, you want to fight? Do you take out your gun? No.
But I don't know again, we don't know that context, and we don't know what that is either. But if the guy charges me and I'm with my daughters, yeah, absolutely, I'll shoot him. I went to a restaurant about a year ago. I go to a restaurant.
No, you wouldn't.
What?
You wouldn't shoot him. No, you wouldn't.
I absolutely would.
I don't believe that. I really don't. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I guarantee there's a lot of potential. You saw as Travis was here the other day. He talks about pre-attack indicators. I'm sure you see pre-attack indicators all the time. Yeah. We all do. I'm sure you've had situations where guys confronted you and maybe even wanted to attack you and you didn't take out your gun.
Dude, so let me finish my story. I'm walking into a restaurant with my daughters, right? One of my daughters is visually impaired. She holds me by the arm, so it takes me a little longer to get through the door than most people. I usually hold the door for my wife and my other daughter, right? And there's this big Mama Luke. I don't know where he's from. He apparently doesn't like ugly bald guys from New York. And he's like, I got it, go. And I was like, no, it's all right, bro. I got it. I appreciate it. Thank you. And literally, I gave this guy no attitude. I said nothing to him. I was just giving him the go because I knew it was going to take me a while to get through. But I said to him, I was like, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Said it in a real calm manner to him. And then next thing I know, we're waiting to be seated. And I'm standing there with my wife and my two daughters and my daughter on my arm. And here comes this big Mama Luke coming in. And he comes back in. And now so I literally take my daughter and I put her back. And he's like, what do you got an attitude about? And I was like, I rushed towards him because I believed he had a firearm on him because he went back to in his car first and then came back to the door, even though he was 3 times my size. And I rushed out. If that guy would have attacked me, I 100% would have shot him dead right in the store right there. 100%. And I would have been justified.
John, don't you think that's a different story? You said you believed he had a firearm. You believe he had a firearm, I have no problem taking your gun out, of course.
How about this? If I didn't believe he had a firearm and I have a 7-foot guy about to attack me when I have my family right behind me for absolutely no reason, violently, and I believe he could overcome me powerfully, yeah, absolutely. I will shoot him dead, 100%. And I support that. I support the Second Amendment and I support the right of self-defense. And so, like, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to keep your job after that. I'm not saying that the soft, woke NYPD that he helped create his last few years in office, his last few years holding these ranks is going to align with that. But I think, again, I don't think you have any duty to fist fight somebody at all, ever. Self-defense applies.
I agree. Listen, someone's 7. I think that's an exception. Obviously, even with as much training as I have, someone who's 7 foot tall, that's a gorilla, man. That's a hard time. It's like if I wanted to fight Shaquille O'Neal, I don't care how much training you have. It's gonna be most likely I'm not gonna win that fight. He's just too massive. It's like fighting a giant car. And
he was a big dude. I'm not saying he was 7 foot, but he was over 6.
I know what you're saying, but
and he was a big country boy, and I was like, "What the fuck did I do?" You know what I mean? I 100% gun, no gun. I'm not fighting that guy. I have no reason that I have to.
I've only seen a couple. I love the chat, by the way. Some people agree with you. Some people agree with me. Some people agree with both. I love it. That's the whole point of this conversation. You shouldn't agree with both of us ever at the same time or everything we say. That's the beauty of these conversations. I only saw a couple of men in my life that were that big that I felt I would have to take my gun out. And that was when I was stationed in Hawaii. Those Samoans, I never seen such big men in my entire life. I never got one time I was in a club and a fight broke out. And I ran to make sure, my Marine buddies were okay. And one of my buddies, I'll never forget him, Ernie, if you're watching this, bro, he's a firefighter in New York City. He stopped. He goes, "Bro, stop, look." And I look, and it was just these 7-foot monsters. Those guys, I was terrified. I was like, let's get the hell out of here. So those are the only couple guys I've ever seen in my life where I was like, no way, giant. If anybody's ever been to Hawaii, if you ever see some of those Samoans, there were 12-year-old girls that were bigger than us. Huge. They ate this thing called poi. But anyway, I know I'm going off. But
Dude, the defensive end for the Jaguars lives around the block from me. Trayvon Walker. This kid is huge, bro. How about this? I usually carry a 380 on me. If he came at me, I'm running. I'm going to my face to get my 45. Like, how about that one? And I don't even think I could outrun him either. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so this dude is huge, bro. I took my kids and my wife for ice cream the other day, and shout out to him. He just signed like I think $120 million
Nice.
5-year deal with them. I go take him to ice cream. I go to the ice cream stores in my neighborhood. He's there, and my kids look up and they go, "Is he a professional athlete?" I'm like, "What do you think?" You know, the guy's a monster. So look, I know what Pat's saying. He said, "Eric, was the guy really 7 feet tall, or was he more like 5'11"? Look, it applies. It applies either way, Pat. You might be right.
Yeah. No, listen. Danny Reagan says, "Eric, I think you're all idiots." Hey, thanks, brother.
John needs to carry a Desert Eagle now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, the bottom line is this. I think that there's certain times in your life that you have to draw the line and make decisions, even though you know the consequences aren't too damn good. So what I'm saying is, while I don't condone certain things, I understand. If I, as a father, Gurley taking action to defend his daughter in any facet, I can't imagine any man, just because you're wearing a uniform, I hope it doesn't neuter you to the point that you don't want to protect your wife or your daughter. I mean, if you're in a situation, someone says something to your wife, and you go, "Well, I can't protect you right now because I'm an NYPD cop," she'll probably divorce you in about 5 minutes. And if she doesn't, shame on her. I can't. How do you look over at your wife and go, "I can't help you. I'm an NYPD cop"? Who knows if his wife said, "Listen, you better do something about this"? How do you tell your wife, "I'm sorry, I can't help my daughter. I'm a 2-star chief"? No, you're a father. You take your balls and you protect your daughter. And even if it gets you suspended, I'm telling you right now, I would know damn well and I'd be willing to get suspended for it. I'm just saying, I struggle a little bit with the whole gun thing. If he took a knife out, yeah. If he took a gun out or you thought he's going to take it out. But let's be honest, you taking your gun does give you a little more security. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong. It's a Second Amendment. You have a right to. Sometimes I do carry a gun too. Not all the time, but sometimes I do. But let's be honest, that is an extra blanket of security that may make him more as an opportunist to go there. Would Gurley go there without the gun? I don't know. I don't really, that's my point.
If you carry a gun, I think it's an irrelevant statement. It doesn't matter. It's like saying, well, you work out or you train jujitsu, so you're more likely to get into a confrontation with someone. And I think that's a bad take to have. Oh, you train, so you're more likely to fight somebody. Like, no, you don't. So I can't approach somebody because I train.
No, actually, if you train, you're more likely not to fight because you get your ass kicked on a daily basis.
Yeah,
and you know the reality.
well, fighters will make that argument, but a prosecutor will make the exact argument, the exact opposite argument.
Good point.
And say that you have a violent tendency, and that's why you like to go and beat people up on the gym every day and roll on the mat with sweaty guys. And so
Yeah.
Great points, brother.
Yeah, I didn't know that Detective Nolan is saying a Desert Eagle. But hey
What?
guys,
I didn't even know. I never heard that. Really?
yeah,
Wow.
I didn't hear that either. But guys, just because Detective Nolan is one of our good viewers, go check out his Twitter. Okay, it's at Detective Nolan on Twitter. There you could see all his crazy memes yourself. Okay, that's at Detective Nolan on Twitter. Okay,
And it features myself, Eric Sanders, Sal Greco, Jack Stern, and Stephen Lee. You know,
No, that's just. I got Nolan, my brother. I gotta give it to you, man. That shit's hilarious. But
Yeah.
it must take a lot of time.
Nolan, get a hobby, bro. Get off social media. Start going
Well, I think
fishing.
he's got a
Go
hobby.
for walks. You know, do something seriously. Because we get a lot of complaints about Nolan too. That like a ton. There's a lot of guys out there that aren't
Yeah.
fans of you, Nolan, and I think you did similar to them.
Yeah.
I
That's true.
personally don't mind. You can continue making fun of me. It doesn't matter to me. But we can't play anything with music or anything like that. And I just wouldn't anyway.
Yeah,
it would
we,
affect our
you
sponsors
get a
and all that.
copyright strike for that music in that
Yeah.
meme too. By the way,
Hey, Danny Reagan says, "Don't encourage him, Mullen."
well, just before we close out that segment, right? I just want to say that the main thing we're forgetting in this is who's the primary aggressor and who initiated it. If you're walking with your family and some guy starts shit with you, I actually have no problem with you pulling out your firearm at a certain point because you have the firearm on you, and if he were to incapacitate you, that's your life and your family's life that's in
I
danger.
agree.
So I have no problem with it. But it all depends on who's the primary aggressor. If the chief happened to be grocery shopping and the perp encountered him and the perp started some shit, I have no problem with that. Pull out your firearm and you gave him warnings to step back. You refused to step back. You drew your fire. No problem with that. It's a different story if the chief went there looking for the guy, encountered him, got into a physical match with him, and then pulled out his gun. I think that's different. And I think if the threat is imminent to your family, you got to do what you got to do. Okay, but you shouldn't put yourself in a circumstance that you shouldn't be the primary aggressor for that incident, and that's just the bottom line.
These are great points, gentlemen. And I want to say, like, you shouldn't be wanting to fight, right? Like, if someone was harassing my daughter or stalking them, obviously I want to protect them, and I know I'm going to get myself into a fight. But you shouldn't want to get into a fight, and that's why I say the more that you train, and I find myself the more that I train, the more I don't want to fight because you realize the realities. And I don't care how much training you have. When you fight someone, you're going to get hurt. You always get hurt. Or something happens. Like you're not just, it's not the movies that you're just going to dodge. You're going to get punched in the face, or you're going to get. And even if you're training and you fight with someone who's untrained, you're going to get scratched. You're going to get bit. You're going to get hit. Something's going to happen. You're going to fall, or you're going to get sued liably. Civilly. It's not a good thing. You should try not to fight. And so I understand. That's my point, Mom. I think I kind of side with you on that. Is that you're bringing a gun to a situation. It's like you're bringing extra security. You already have that gun on you. You're a gun carrying Second Amendment holder, which you should be. That fight is coming to you. So what I'm saying is, when as the chief, and as a father, I get it. You go in there, hopefully to have that conversation. But what I'm saying is, I don't believe that conversation with someone who's so psychotic and demonic as what I heard, that it's not going to end well. And then you know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, so I say he was 100% right for confronting him, depending on that situation, because his other daughter was there calling for help. I think he should have brought a Bible along with his gun. And I don't think carrying a gun means anything. And I don't think talking to someone is a confrontation either. If someone physically attacks you, you have the right to defend yourself. And that is it. The People's Republic of New York may believe differently or may put a spin on that. If we're looking at it as two police officers who respond to a 911 call and then being judged by their use of force, yeah, a lot of those things aren't going to be correct. But when we're talking about a father who's concerned about his daughter and the public safety apparatus in his town is not helping that, I wish him the best of luck. I don't know any of the rest of the details, and honestly, I don't even care what they are. I'm going to side with him. like I said, it just is what it is, you know. And someone said, "Oh, you shouldn't talk about this on because this could be used in your grand jury." You know, let it be, because it needs to be said. Like, there is a right to bear arms in this country, and we have a right to self defense. In Florida, we actually have a stand your ground law, and everything that I've stated here is coincides exactly with all of those founding principles of the United States of America, as well as the stand your ground law in Florida. And so, as someone who's consistently under threat, yeah, I carry my gun. That is not a blanket of security for me. I carry a gun for protection for my family. I wish I didn't have to, but that's the environment that we live in today. You know,
No, I have no issues. You should carry a gun. And I do. I should carry it more often too. I do have a gun. We should carry it. You're right. You do have a right to it. Your Second Amendment. I do think you should carry a gun. And that's what I'm saying. But that's different. The fight is coming to you. You're not looking for that fight. Listen, I said I train. I don't want to get into fight. If I could take my firearm out and I don't have to go hands on, that's great. If I get into a fight, listen, plenty of physical encounters in the police department, you know, fight with guys over guns. I broke my pinky. I broke knuckles. I broke so many fingers. It's never a win. So you want to try to avoid it. And but I think ultimately this was a great conversation. I just want to say the totality of circumstances. I know we're pretty critical when it comes to chiefs, but to Gurley, I want to say, to me, I'm not looking at you as a chief, just like you said earlier, John. I'm looking at you as a father, and as a father, ultimately, I do think overall you did the right thing. You're supposed to protect your family, and however you did that. So I'm glad you landed softly. I just hope. My point is, I just hope that if a cop one day is in this situation, and I hope he's not, that he lands softly as well. That's my point to this conversation.
All right. Yeah. So anything else before we hit the super chats?
I just posted that George got a spot on for that. Thank you, George. That's a good it's good to make a distinction between primary aggressor and the initial aggressor. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you get a spot on for that. What I meant was the initial aggressor. Thank you, George.
Spot on. George got a couple of spot ons today, man. We might have the spot on winner.
He's not going to get talked to by the CO. You know, he's got his spot ons for the month. Yeah?
George, good man, brother. George, send your picture, bro. I want to see what you look like.
Yeah, a good time to remember, guys, that most times you're going to deal with the lieutenant in your precinct. By the way, you know, I don't even think the CO knew who my name was. Or even spoke to me until I got it in the FIO's office. Then the CO would come in all the time. But if I didn't come in with my numbers for the month, I'd have to deal with the sergeant, but the lieutenant. In my case, it was Lieutenant Cotton. If you're from the 7-7, you know who Lieutenant Cotton is. I'd have to deal with her. You know.
I think.
Shout out to Lieutenant Cotton. I think she's retired now. But
sorry, brother. I couldn't hear that. Will Ticket in the chat, must be a new friend listener, says just like Cain Velasquez. I agree. Cain Velasquez, and I think everyone in this country is supporting him, right? You know, you're taking care of business when someone's coming after his niece, right? I think it was his niece. Yeah, so that's a great point.
Yeah. All right, peoples. All right, we'll be back Monday morning. Jessica Tisch is going in front of the Public Safety Hearing Board in New York City Council. They're going to be talking about the budget. So I'll be tuned in with that. We'll do a 3-hour show then on Monday going forward. Wednesdays will probably be less than that. You know, we'll have a guest on. Yeah, so that should be a good show coming up. If you guys didn't check out the Executive's Perspective or 10-4 Tavern this week, make sure you check them out. And yeah, let's keep rocking and rolling. Let's go to the super chats. Nolan gave us $50. He says, please give Marlon the green light to put up the video of you and Lee. Like I said, dude, we can't. I honestly thought it was funny. Anyone that's curious to see what he's been putting out, it's funny. It's a little demented. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm not at the point where I got to break out the Bible on you yet, Nolan. But you know, I'm not praying Psalm 23 or Psalm 91 over you yet. But you know, I still got some faith in you. And he also gave another $50. He said, Eric for the spot on. Low.
That's right, brother.
And lay off Stephen Lee a little bit. You know, it's all right to criticize, but it's getting a little much yet, you know. And he also did another good video on Jack that I was featured in also. And there was a song about Jack. I don't know what the hell it was, but it was hysterical.
I just want to say, Nolan, I like Stephen Lee. Honestly, I like you too, but I like Stephen Lee, man. I do.
Yeah. Mike Marino says, John, a man of principles, even if you are angry. I'm not angry. I'm very even keeled. You know, I just got an angry face.
What?
I just got an angry face. That's it. People misconstrue me.
John, even keeled?
Even keeled, you know. Modern Samurai, he said, all these government budgets are out of control and massively in debt, but this man dummy scheme will work. Politicians are full of shit and are just looking to take care of themselves and friends. I mean, and yet there are people that don't believe that, and they're like, nah, it's all gonna work out, Mo. Unions are got our best interest. They're gonna get us something good for this. And it's like, there's nothing good for this. There's nothing you're gonna get that's good for this. Everything you're gonna get is gonna be short-term benefit, long-term deficit. Like, I don't understand what you guys don't get about that, you know? So I know there's a lot of people listen to this today that, you know, there's a lot of arguments going on in the NYPD and across New York City now because of what we've been talking about. And so I don't see it any other way. And so, yeah, all of a sudden everybody believes in socialism and thinks that they have socialism's a great financial plan, and New York City's financially, fiscally stable, and they trust their unions. Okay, I don't, but you do.
Yeah, that's the part I don't understand, is that we're getting like pushback here. Like, I don't want anything bad to happen to the pension either. I get a pension. I'm sure as hell, John, I bet you don't want anything bad to happen to the pension either. And neither does Mon, because, you know, there is hopefully a way back from getting his retroactive pension that he deserves. We all want a pension. So we want the best for this. We have to face the realities. If we pretend it's not there, then guess what? You're going to wake up one day and go, wait, what happened? Who was in the union?
Yeah. Finest 25 says, present for duty, must watch, and discussion. Thank you for always being here, brother. We appreciate it.
Yeah, good man.
We got a Pat Donahue. I think he's coming at us. Today's show sucked. Not one mention of RV life. Wrong. Eric brought it up at least 3 times, I believe. Intel FIO spot. I believe Marlon brought that up.
I did.
Or the hazards of being an IAB command center. Involuntary. I did not bring that up. I also was an Intel FIO, though. I could. So if I could do that. And I do want to get an RV. So you could add that in.
Do you?
Yeah. Is there a negative spot on? We need to add like a negative spot on, or like a CD here. So
we just got to be able to give Pat Donahue a thumbs down. If they was able to give Donahue a thumbs down, there'd be a bunch of board members right now from the DEA just clicking Donahue every time he went down. And we'd actually, you know what? If you DEA, if you guys want to sponsor us, we'll downgrade Pat Donahue. You know,
I think they would do that in a second. Johnny, seriously, you ready to get RV?
Blowing up your phone now.
Yeah, you guys got some weird sponsorships that you've been putting out recently. You know, something about on boxing shorts of a board member's kid. God. Like a lot of weird things happening there. You know, I don't know, but if you guys want to sponsor the Finest Unfiltered, or if SBA, you know, they want to do a sergeant spotlight here on the Finest Unfiltered, you know, we're not going to delay from, we still want the answer. Well, Vinny gave his answer, but Scott still hasn't. So Scott, we hear that there's going to be a missing milk box made for you, Lou and Chris. Stay tuned. You know, stay tuned for that, people.
John, you ready for the RV life?
RV life? Not for long, bro. I don't like
best.
Like even the few weeks I'm gonna do a month in New York. Like I hate that. I hate doing that. I hate being away from my own personal bed for that long. And then like in the holidays when I'm gone for weeks, like I hate it. You know. So, but I like to travel. I could do 2-3 weeks. Like I could do 2-3 weeks. I'm good, but I can't stay on the road.
I can sleep on a rock, man. Like I said, backpacking through Asia for a year, I can sleep anywhere. That's no problem. I love to travel. You might change your mind when you're on the road in the RV, man. It's like being in your own movie. It's awesome.
Well, the RV is like your home, you know. So
it is, yeah.
If it's comfortable, then hey, I think it might work out. Yeah, I mean, you got to have a very comfortable RV, though. You know,
dude, you got to see these RVs now. They're sick. You go inside some of these RVs, and they have like really nice mattresses, like top of the line. I mean, it's shocking, man. The things that are in some of these RVs.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just like my neighborhood. I like where I'm at. I like my You know, I'm East Coast minded anyway. You know, this is where my brain sits. So it's like,
East Coast, man.
yeah,
You're doing a West Coast offense.
West Coast style offense, baby. Oh, you know what's funny? Shell said that he said that when he shocks the world in 2029, his first act will be to fire Edwin Ray.
Oh,
So,
my God.
yeah, I don't know. I got a good chuckle out of that one.
That's hilarious.
That was good.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sorry, John.
No, say what you gonna say. What is it?
No, I was just gonna say I now see that super chat from Anthony, and I want to give Anthony a spot on too, because he had a great comment earlier that I didn't mention, that how it's effectively a bailout what they want to do with the pensions. It's bailing out the budget with the pension funds, So he gets a spot on for that. And yes, I'm gonna be very liberal with the spot on, because I want you guys to get into. I want your CPI to look good, you know, and get in the gang.
Marlon, this is gonna go with their jackets. Like, oh, you got spot ons in the Finest Unfiltered. You're getting into the squad.
Yeah.
I'll give all the negative crafts. I'm good on that one. I'll give all the negative.
Nolan, I know you're retired right now, but I don't know what you're gonna do with those spot ons. You got to put them somewhere.
Yeah.
But if you're active on the job, we're gonna put them right in your folder. Boom.
Well, he can open his own YouTube channel and put them on his back wall, you know.
Maybe one day Nolan and Steve will be friends.
I do like fried rice, though. I'm good with that. So Anthony says, keep keeping us informed. And Pat Donahue says, my haters will be my waiters when he sits down at the table of my happiness.
I'm going to have Pat Donahue write my jokes for me.
That's that.
It's pretty good.
All right, peoples. Yeah, so that's it. So look, if you want more violence interventions and you want to give the city a loan, do it out of your own bank account. Stay away from our pension, you know, and that should be your own thing. If Scott Moreau believes it's a good job, take it out of your own money. Take it out of your own pension. You know, Chris, you think it's a good thing? Take it out of your pension. Lou, take it out of your pension. You know, I don't want to take it out of mine. I don't think that New York City is fiscally responsible. And I don't think that any of the programs that are happening in New York City can't be reduced to a $0 budget and ultimately done, including many of the new programs like the Department of Community Safety, the Department of Racial Equity. I think literally their budgeted line items should be to zero. So if for some reason I come out and shock the world in 2029, you know what to expect. CMS, you will be funded down to $0. DEI departments will be funded down to $0. Racial equity will be funded down to $0, and so on and so forth. And every non-for-profit that's been ineffective at helping homelessness or mentally illness and can't show results, immediately their contracts are seized at that point. And until that happens, don't ask us for shit, because you're not fiscally conservative. You don't care about what's going on. You're just trying to kick the can down the road till you're no longer out of office. And so that's where I stand on that.
Hey, anybody want to take this bet, or we're all going to agree on it? How much you want to bet Lou Terrico and Scott and who's the CA guy? I don't even know his name.
Chris Monahan.
Yeah, that's how insignificant he is. I don't even know his name. True. Chris Monahan, stay on the job till the 65 with this new bill. Congratulations.
I'm not betting against you. I'm not betting against you.
Still be 65, tier 2, and they'll all leave with a 3/4 pension.
Shockingly. I am not betting against you on that one.
No.
Yeah. Good job, Mo. We're gonna get something good. The union's gonna get us something good, Mo. You know, they haven't done anything in the last 20 years that have been good, but you know, this time it's gonna be different because Mamdani's in.
Everything changed.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know monopoly money was legal in New York City now. You know, I'm gonna have to dig out that monopoly I have up in the attic and see if I could go pay off my mortgage with it now, because they're effectively promising you guys monopoly money here. Okay, that money ain't gonna be that. They don't even have the money for the budget now. You think they're gonna have the money for the budget for how much they owe your pension in like 5 years? So
that's right, brother. Listen, it's 3 hours, 18 minutes into it. The Finest Unfiltered, your Friday roundtable. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all the spot-ons. Thank you for the engagement that we had here today. This is a great conversation. You really need to understand the pension, dive into it, and not just pretend that everything will just be okay. It's not magic money. Understand the big investment there. And Edwin Raymond, shout out to you, brother. We have an affinity for you. We respect you, but we're going to hold your feet to the fire and keep you accountable as well, brother. And you know that, and I know you expect it. And, of course, with that, what was the other topic we spoke about here? Chief Gurley. Chief Gurley, yeah, you're a dad, brother, before you were a chief. So shout out to you, brother. We get it. So Friday Roundtable, thank you, everyone. Have an awesome weekend. And if you're a cop and you're wondering what you could do in your life, be an entrepreneur. I say be an entrepreneur. Or become a podcaster. You can, but don't be filtered. Be unfiltered like some of these new podcasts are coming out. They're all unfiltered. Right?
Yeah. Imitation's the highest form of flattery, fellas. So a lot of imitators out there. So that's it. A teacher just got fired in St. Johns County because she said, "You call them haters, but I call them fans." And I'm like, that's literally like the story of my life. You know, like that's literally the story of my life. Check out my DMs. You know, it's like insane. You know, so yeah, I was like, thought that was wild that the teacher got fired over it, but it's true. So you know, a lot of people don't like the shit we say. A lot of people don't like what we do, but there's certainly a lot of people trying to say the thing, talk about the things we're talking about, and do the things we're trying to do. So wish you guys best of luck because you're gonna need it. Finest Unfiltered, baby. We will be back at you on Monday.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?